I chased after Jing, the campus heartthrob from humble beginnings, for a whole year, spending lavishly and making a complete fool of myself in pursuit, finally managed to win over this unattainable prince who stood as aloof as pines and bamboos. But at my birthday banquet where I first introduced him publicly, he shielded some delicate scholarship student like a white lotus, then dumped an entire bottle of red wine on me in front of everyone, before I could recover from the shock and fury. Lines of text materialized midair. Serves her right, the male lead's rebirth arc demands brutal payback against that villainess, the wheel of fortune turns, last lifetime she drove the heroine to suicide, now it's her turn, karma's a bitch, she had everything yet stole from the FL and bullied her, dying bankrupt was mercy after what the ML made her suffer, as if to confirm the utter absurdity of the words, Jing shot me a disdainful glance, then tenderly comforted the person in his arms. Don't be afraid of her, so what if she's rich, as long as I'm here, no one will ever bully you again. The delicate girl looked pitifully at him. Brother, sure, you don't have to stick up for me, I'm used to it. People around me were staring, pointing, and looking at me strangely. I wiped my face. The next second, I swung my arm and slapped them. I rubbed my stinging palm, tucked my hair behind my ear, and sneered, trying to be a hero. You clearly don't know your place. I've got 2 graves dug right here. Want M1. Sticky wine dripped down my hair, which I'd spent an hour meticulously styling. My nominal boyfriend, Jing, had just put down an empty wine bottle, 2 minutes ago. In an unnoticed corner, Su Inwan stood before me, a beaming smile on her face, dressed in a cheap knockoff of my gown. Jiang, we share the same birthday, yet because you're rich, everyone only remembers you. Sometimes I really envy you, so today, I'm giving you a grand gift. With that, she raised her hand and slapped herself hard across the face. The sharp sound of a slap drew everyone's attention. She fell to the ground, looking pitifully vulnerable. Jing was the first to arrive. Without hesitation, he grabbed a bottle of red wine and splashed it all over me. It drenched me from head to toe. I stared at Jing in disbelief. The dark red stain ruined my carefully planned birthday party like a jagged, dividing scar. I was going to announce our relationship at this very party. I'd even prepared expensive gifts and surprises for him at my own birthday party, yet at this moment, Jing was shielding Su Inwan protectively, cradling her like a long-lost treasure. My hands trembled violently. It wasn't just from heartbreak and my disheveled state. It was also because of the sudden appearance of scrolling lines of bright red text right before my eyes. Well done, after his rebirth. The male lead finally saw the wicked female antagonist for who she truly is. What goes around comes around. Last life, she drove the female lead to suicide. This life, it's her turn, serves her right. She had everything and still stole from the female lead, bullying her relentlessly. Dying bankrupt was too good for her. My heart aches for the poor heroine. If that scheming side character hadn't stolen her scholarship, she wouldn't have been forced to take such desperate measures. I tentatively took a step forward, as if to confirm the absurd barrage of comments before my eyes. Jing shot me a disdainful glance while shielding Su Inwan more protectively. He comforted the sobbing girl in his arms. Don't be afraid of her. So what if she's rich? Does money give her the right to bully others? As long as I'm here, no one can harass you. I stared at Jing, my hands trembling violently. You're saying I bullied her? Jing's disgust deepened. What else? You think she slapped herself across the face? Su Inwan leaned against Jing, and at the opportune moment, lifted her pitiful, tear-filled face, her eyes red-rimmed. Jiang isn't doing this on purpose. It's all my fault for wearing the same dress as her. I'm so sorry, Jiang. I just wanted to dress nicely to celebrate your birthday. She choked back a sob. Sure, you don't have to stick up for me. If Jiang minds, let her vent. I've always known she has issues with poor people like us. I'm used to it. The people around them exchanged strange looks. The chirping of crickets from all directions had never been so clear. So what if they wore the same outfit? Is there any need to throw such a fit? Miss Jiang Fushua's temperament isn't exactly new. She's been chasing Jing for ages, even breaking up his childhood sweethearts. But Jing still has feelings for Su Inwan. So how could she possibly be happy? Still, that's no excuse to bully someone like that. Su Inwan was nestled in my boyfriend's arms. She looked up at me and silently mouthed, Miss Rich Girl, see, who'd believe you're innocent, too? I stared straight at Jing. He'd clearly overheard the whispers around us, yet he showed not a shred of trust in me. He just glared at me as if I'd committed some unforgivable sin, exactly like the villainess described in those barrage comments. Are those bullet comments for real? My heart sank to the depths. I pursued Jing for a year. I spared no expense, put in all the effort, and did everything a simp would, from my best friend's confusion to the entire school's teasing. Jing remained unfazed. My best friend, Bairan, once scolded me, exasperated. I haven't seen him refuse any of your gifts, though. Okay, he hasn't sold them for cash either, so he's not exactly a gold digger, but his heart only beats for that childhood sweetheart, who's also from a poor family. Why are you, a rich young lady, getting involved? You're just making a fool of yourself. Of course, I know all about Jing and Su Inwan being childhood sweethearts, everyone's talking about it, but I can't help it. I really like this type, because he's untainted by the muck, with a character as steadfast as a pine and as upright as bamboo. He constantly says he doesn't like anyone, his emotions are pure, and unlike his mother, who was a kept woman and took shortcuts to latch onto rich men, he possesses a clean, powerful drive to change his life through learning. I'm truly captivated by him, so, even when Jing approached me 3 days ago, holding his mother's exorbitant credit card bill, in a strange and awkward manner, I agreed readily, even admiring his pure-hearted filial devotion. It never crossed my mind that he'd strayed so soon from the very qualities that first drew me to him. That pretentious attitude, playing the businessman while putting on airs of superiority, was exactly what I despised most. Wiping the alcohol from my eyes felt like clearing away the fog before me. Fingertips turned ice cold. If those bullet comments were telling the truth, he's been reborn. Would he still take revenge and ruin me? How dare they, just because he's the male lead? And I'm the villainess. I gave everything, money, effort, even my heart, and this is what I deserve. Rage exploded in my chest like dynamite. Screw your noble virtues. To hell with being a damsel in distress. A sharp, resounding slap brutally cut off the whispers. The force of it made Jing's handsome face snap to the side, leaving clear red finger marks. The entire place fell silent, without hesitation. I grabbed another open champagne bottle from the nearby table and poured it straight over Jing and Su Inwan's heads. Ah! Su Inwan's shriek shattered the silence, rubbing my stinging palms. I slicked my soaked hair behind my ears, meeting the crowd's stunned gazes. I sneered, playing hero. For whom? You. Know your place. I've got 2 graves here. Want M3. Holy crap. Doesn't the villainess love the male lead? Why isn't she playing by the rules? Honestly, I kinda like the villainess's crazy streak. It's no wonder the male lead failed miserably because of her in his last life. Jing shivered, jolted by the icy liquid. As if only just snapping back to reality, he stared at me in disbelief, clutching his swollen cheek. Jiang Fushue, how dare you hit me? How could you bring myself to? I advanced relentlessly, delivering another backhanded slap before switching to alternating strikes until his face was symmetrically red. Didn't your canary mother teach you a kept man's manners? Truly a pig that wallows in its own filth, living off me, spending my money to pay your mother's debts, yet you had the gall to throw wine at me. Trash, you got a death wish. Suyin shrieked. Jiang, how dare you humiliate people like this? I backhanded her without breaking stride, got so caught up hitting him, I nearly forgot you, me bullying you. You'd better pray I actually was bullying you before, because starting today, I'll show you what real bullying looks like. Life's gonna be as easy as flipping pancakes. Slap left, slap right. Are you saying I bullied her and drove her to suicide? Don't be ridiculous. I'm not psychotic enough to take someone's life, especially not someone who couldn't measure up to me in anything, from academic performance to family background. What makes Su Inwan worthy of me lowering my head to speak to her? Even if she's Jing's childhood friend, I never gave her a second glance. Yet she's the one sniveling about her disadvantages, hinting to everyone that she only loses to me because I have connections. Give me a break. My family didn't manipulate anything, from the national scholarships to the competition results. I rolled my eyes. Did you all hear that? Anyone who feels sorry for this male sugar baby and his childhood sweetheart can bear witness for me today. Jing and I are a fair match, I said, spreading my hands. He's after money, and I'm after looks. Consider this past year my gift to him. Just don't badmouth me behind my back anymore. A person can be blind once, but they shouldn't have to be disgusted twice. Okay. The crowd fell silent. My bestie was the first to snap out of it. Bairan shoved Jing aside and gleefully pulled me along. That's more like it. I told you his zodiac clashes with yours. Glorifying men only brings a lifetime of bad luck. I followed Bairan as she turned to leave. The barrage exploded even faster than Jing's reaction. Why's the supporting female leading? This isn't how the plot goes. She's supposed to give the male lead her black card at the birthday party. How's the male lead gonna catch this investment wave without seed money? This is the crucial moment to buy that stock at rock bottom and build his first capital. Chill, the supporting females head over heels for him. Just wait, she'll come crawling back with puppy eyes any minute now. I glanced at the bullet comments, took the silk scarf from her hand, and roughly wiped my hair with it. It was tangled. I yanked off the hair clip, letting my hair fall over my shoulders. I casually swept my messy bangs back and tucked them behind my ears. The click-clack of high heels echoed on the ground. I said coldly, "I'll have your supplementary card frozen. Get your trash out of the villa before tonight." Sure, Jing's eyes reddened. His gaze held disbelief, humiliation, and resentment, all condensing into one resolute declaration. "Fine, I won't take a single cent from you, Jiang Fuxue. Don't you dare regret this." His unyielding resilience, like the pure breeze and bright moon, stood tall as a steadfast pine, still as captivating as ever. Bai Iran declared loudly, "Four-legged toads are rare, but two-legged men are everywhere. Who cares about regrets, Fuxue? Let's change and celebrate somewhere else. Don't let this ruin the mood." "My treat, who's coming?" The crowd surged forward, following Bai Iran and me, leaving Jing and Suyin completely ignored. I grasped her hand gratefully. Bai Iran winked at me with a playful grin. "That's what sisters are for." She'd seen right through me. Every heart beats with compassion. Tough talk won't help. Stop being stubborn. That was a whole year, a year of my blood, sweat, and tears. How could I not feel heartbroken? 4. Inside the luxurious Japanese onsen-themed pavilion, Bai Iran and I sat by the massive crystal floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the emerald green mountain ranges. The freshly air-shipped black pearls still glistened with moisture. The supporting female character only moped for a week, and doesn't seem to be going after the male lead. Is this how it's supposed to be? Ah, our poor male lead is suffering so much. That heartless supporting female took back his credit card. Now he's working 3 jobs to pay his mom's debts. Living on instant noodles for 3 days straight. At least the female lead is sticking by him. Just some dirty money. Let that supporting female enjoy it while she can. The male lead's got that reincarnated dragon protagonist script. Her comeuppance is coming. Bai Iran waved her hand in front of my eyes. "What's wrong? You look terrible." Still upset about Jing. I rested my chin in my hand, stroking it thoughtfully. My other hand slowly tapped on the table. Bai Iran shivered. "That look on your face, it's exactly how I looked when I seized the family fortune and dealt with my good-for-nothing brother." Creepy. Before she could finish, I suddenly broke into a genuine smile. Ran, has your brother returned from abroad? If I remember correctly, he specializes in biology, right?" "Yes." Her eyes lit up. "He actually mentioned wanting to meet you. He's always been fascinated by you, says it's impressive how you took over the family business at such a young age." I sighed sincerely. I'd been equally curious about him, fascinated by his biological research. Is this scrolling barrage projected directly onto retinas using VR tech or brainwave signals? If we crack this technology, can it be monetized? Bai Iran said. "You've finally come to your senses." I nodded. "Yeah, they threw mud at me, and I insisted on using that mud to plant flowers." She looked puzzled. I handed her my business card with a mysterious air. "I want to meet your brother. Stop mumbling and speak plainly, you riddlemonger." Just forcing a smile while the male lead will never love you, trying to make him jealous. That won't work on the male lead. I stared at the scrolling barrage of comments, a radiant smile that dawned with glacial slowness, a smile that chilled the bones. Affection isn't something you can simply forget in a heartbeat, but time has a way of softening its edges. Only I, and my interests, are eternal. I raised my glass with disdain, then I drained the amber liquid in my cup. 5. I had a meeting scheduled with Bai Iran's brother, Bai Hoen, at a coffee shop. The young man sat across from me, impeccably dressed, his shirt buttoned primly to the very top. The faint scent of disinfectant cut through the week's accumulated stickiness. He wore rimless glasses and extended a hand to shake mine. I got straight to the point. "Hello, Professor Bai. I'm Ranran's friend. I assume she's already told you why I'm here. We're both straightforward people, so I'll just get right to it. Professor Bai, does this world possess technology capable of projecting language directly onto a person's retina in real time?" Bai Hoen replied calmly. "I'm afraid not, Miss Jiang. Given the current biological constraints of carbon-based lifeforms and our technological limitations, we cannot invade neural pathways to achieve real-time retinal projection," I said with grave seriousness. "But what if? I really can see it. What's happening? System glitch. Can the supporting female character actually see us? So what if she sees us? What's she gonna do? Come at me if you dare." Bai Hoen calmly adjusted his glasses. A dangerous glint flickered in his mesmerizing eyes. He murmured, "Miss Jiang's brainwaves. Now those are truly worth studying. I casually pulled out a stack of documents from my bag. This is my recent EEG report. I took a sip of coffee. And here's my project proposal. If we collaborate, we could crack this technology. The potential is huge. You'd contribute your expertise for 15% equity. Fair enough. Bai Howen studied me intently before curling his lips. Aren't you afraid, Miss Jiang? My smile never reached my eyes. I'm a businesswoman. I can chase someone foolishly for a year, but never at the cost of my own interests. Bai Howen accepted the proposal cheerfully. You've misunderstood, Miss Jiang. I simply admire your competence, he said. You're becoming increasingly fascinating to me. Lower dimensional beings, speechless, these two insignificant ants biting off more than they can chew. The male lead has already seized the advantage after his rebirth, while the villainess remains clueless that Jiang Corporation's two lifeline investment projects are about to be snatched away, aren't they? As this barrage comment appeared, my phone's emergency alert tone suddenly rang out. Jiang, Mr. Jiang, Secretary Lin from Fengrui Group just called, saying there's a college student named Shi Jing who showed up with a bid proposal identical to ours, but that's supposed to be top secret. My usually composed chief secretary's voice was filled with panic. 6. The villainess must be panicking now. This kind of reborn, seizing the initiative, face-slapping, Mary Sue's story is just so satisfying. The chief secretary continued, that Shi Jing is waiting for you at the company right now. He said he has something to tell you. I grabbed my bag, politely bid Bai Howen farewell, and headed to the office. On the elevator right up to the CEO's office on the top floor, I weighed the bag in my hand. What a shame, a platinum Birkin, not suitable for hitting people. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper. Shi Jing lounged effortlessly across the parlor sofa. I still remember not long ago, before he came begging me to pay off his mother's credit card debt, when he perched on my villa's handcrafted Italian leather sofa. His stiff posture and rigid spine betrayed his discomfort amidst this world of luxury, genuine youthful innocence. But now, he stands unshaken like a veteran who's weathered countless storms, even in that studentish shirt and cheap slacks. He carries himself with quiet confidence. Why did you block me? I clenched my teeth, barely stopping myself from smashing my bag in his face. That's all you've got to say. Security. Shi Jing lifted his chin defiantly. Don't bother calling security. I'll leave on my own. You think I wanted to come here? With an arrogant smirk of triumph, Shi Jing declared, Jiang Fuxue, I came to inform you. I'll fight the Jiang Corporation to the bitter end. I know all about your schemes. When your empire crumbles, we'll see how high and mighty you remain. I handed my bag to my assistant and beckoned with a curled finger. Damn right it's impressive. How'd you know? Come closer. Skip the civil mediation. I'll slap another 50 grand's worth onto you. Behave, and I'll throw in an extra 50 grand for emotional damages. Help your kept woman mom pay off her maxed out credit cards. Again, Shi Jing's cheek twitched. A nerve had been struck. He glared at me with misplaced superiority, conveniently omitting how he'd been scraping by lately. Jiang Fuxue, you're always like this, acting all high and mighty, as if you're doing someone a favor. Get this straight, I'm the one who knows about your bid now. You should be begging me. I remained calm. Who's begging whom? What do you want? If Bai Yiren were here, she'd definitely say it for me. Shi Jing is dead meat. The last person who threatened me was my brother, who was fighting me for the family inheritance. He's been dead and buried for ages. Shi Jing, however, clearly misunderstood. He looked at me, now calm and seemingly just bluffing, with a complicated expression, a mix of nostalgia and inner conflict. After a long pause, he sighed. Fuxue, I know you still have feelings for me and you're angry about what I did that day, but you completely humiliated me that day. I didn't actually want to destroy you. If you'd just shown some humility, I couldn't have brought myself to hurt you. After all, we were together for so long. I cut him off bluntly. So long? 3 days counts as so long. Losing patience, I signaled my chief assistant to drag him away. 3 days, try 3 years, I said pointedly. The moment you threw that drink for someone else, you were already rotten to the core. Shi Jing instinctively shielded his face. You threw one back at me too, didn't you? I spat out 2 words with contempt. Not enough. I tilted my head slightly. Know your place. Cut the nonsense. Want me to regret it? I'll see this through to the end. Now, get out. Immediately, the security guards escorted Shi Jing out, practically dragging him away. Turning back to my office, I dialed the legal department of Jiang Group. I'm getting more and more confused by this plot. How did the supporting female lead suddenly fall out of love with the male lead? No lingering feelings at all. How heartless, truly living up to her role as the villainess. what's that supporting character up to now? What are you trying to do? Half an hour later, I hung up the phone, glancing at the floating barrage comments. I let out a scornful chuckle. Call yourselves higher dimensional beings. Can't even grasp something this simple. I replied nonchalantly with a smile. Just making some small preparations while waiting for him to come begging. 666. Starting your daydreams before sunset. Look, I know you can be a real pain sometimes, but seriously, don't mess with the male lead. He's got plot armor. If you just humble yourself a bit, make up with him, and help him reach the top, wouldn't you benefit too? Benefit? I pressed my fist to my mouth, as if I'd just heard the funniest joke. Benefits? The cake is only so big, I can eat it all myself. So why should I cut it for others and be at their mercy? Is he some kind of chosen one? I'll try being a chosen one myself. 7. A month later, still in the top floor office of the Jiang Group building, I arched an eyebrow at the disheveled Shijing across from me. He'd lost considerable weight, his posture no longer as ramrod straight. My eyes flicked to the barrage of comments. CEO Lin of Fengruwei Group actually rejected the male lead's bidding proposal. The male lead has hit a wall 5 times in a row. Sigh. A wise man knows when to yield. I get why he's crawling back to the villainous now. That black card and her endorsement are just too valuable to pass up. I couldn't help but let out an unkind chuckle. You can't teach someone by just telling them. Experience teaches best. One lesson is enough. Does rebirth guarantee a head start? Money and power in this world spread like a virus, only transmitted through mother to child, sexual contact, and blood. You know it's profitable. You know it's a hot commodity. Why should it be you? You want to take on 2 of my Jiang family's projects. Stop daydreaming. After being politely or sarcastically turned away by various companies and facing repeated rejections, he finally came to his senses, stripped of his former swaggering confidence. He wiped his face in humiliation as if making some resolute decision. Could you give me a small investment? I'll pay you back with interest, I said teasingly. Jiang Fushue, don't say I didn't warn you. I wouldn't take a penny from you. Think money makes you special. I didn't even want to come here in the first place. I repeated his bold declaration. Need me to say it again? Shijing gritted his teeth. I know you're angry. Just invest in me, and I'll take whatever you dish out. Hold it. I snapped his proposal shut with a sharp clap. What exactly is our relationship now? Shijing looked at me with complicated emotions. I'll be your obedient boyfriend. A smirk curled my lips. Then I snatched that proposal and hurled it straight at his face. Amid the fluttering papers, I sneered. Dream on, Shijing. We're just classmates. This pathetic proposal. I could write better blindfolded, and you expect me to invest in this garbage? I raised an eyebrow. Our flimsy schoolmate connection hardly warrants me handing you a life-changing sum just for your little whims. Shijing panicked, bending down to gather the scattered documents. Whether he was reassembling papers or salvaging his dignity remained unclear. His eyes darkened. Jiang Fushue, I admit I need you. Happy now. Stop being petty. I'm desperate for this money. I watched him pack up with cold eyes, offering a blunt assessment of his inexplicable confidence. You're just as despicable as your mother. The one who became a kept woman and then deluded herself into thinking she could climb the ranks by getting pregnant and forcing her way in. Shijing's hands froze. His hand slipped, and the document fell to the floor again. His shoulders trembled, and his eyes were red. You never used to be like this. How could you say such things to me? I said coolly. Are you stuck living in the past? Seems it's more than just the past. It's that distant previous life I cherished, when I basked in wealth and privilege. He glared at me, abandoning the scattered papers as he straightened up and stormed off. I'll make you respect me, Jiang Fushue. We'll see about that. Shijing staggered away, twirling my pen. A plan suddenly formed in my mind. He's really putting in the effort. I'm almost feeling bad for him. Let him make some final contributions. I summoned my chief secretary and whispered, trash belongs in the dump. Aren't there still some pieces of garbage on the board that my brother used to cozy up to? See if we can arrange them all at the same table. The willing bite the hook. The chief secretary caught my drift and shuddered. I casually dropped that line and turned to the barrage comments. They were scrolling at lightning speed. That's so insulting. Truly, utterly insulting. The male lead made a huge decision before coming to see you. He's such a proud person. Do you know how much he sacrificed? Die, you wicked female antagonist. I intently enjoyed the barrage of insults aimed at me. Only after the chief secretary left did I grin. Are you mad? You've been annoyed with me for so long. Why haven't you punished me yet? Is it because you don't want to? The barrage of comments fell eerily silent for a moment. I savored the rare clear screen. Oh, so you can't. After I kicked Shijing out last time, I had someone put him on the blacklist. How dare he still waltz in and out of Jiang Corporation so freely and appear before me, because I allowed it, obviously. I just wanted to see if these high-tech dimension bullet comments could actually do anything beyond empty talk. The results speak for themselves, higher dimensional beings, I sneered openly, my voice sharp with contempt. Just a bunch of pathetic peeping toms. Stop pretending you're special. Seems you can't protect him, so tell me, can you even protect yourselves? My smile widened, bright with mock curiosity. How fascinating. The email icon blinked. From a day ago, Bai Hoen and I have made progress on our project. 8. Since that day, the barrage comments fell eerily silent. Except for the occasional sporadic messages, what can lower dimensional beings possibly do to us? The protagonist got rejected, again, what the hell? This is so unsatisfying. I clicked expecting an overpowered protagonist, but instead I see him working morning shifts at a convenience store, cafeteria gigs at noon, and dishwashing at night. The protagonist seems to have such miserable luck. And his fortune stat keeps dropping. I don't know if Shijing is having a tough time, anyway. I just poured another $1 million into the investment, lying on the king-size, custom-made mattress in my private dorm. I opened my email to check on the latest research progress and, while I was at it, took Bai Hoen's video call. He pushed up his glasses and smiled. Is the information clear enough? I couldn't help but go through it again. A genuine smile spreading across my face. Truly professional work. The progress has skyrocketed over these 2 months. This document thoroughly analyzes and presents possible origins of Danmaku with comprehensive evidence. Bai Hoen spoke calmly. Simply put, Danmaku can be understood as players from the three-dimensional world observing the two-dimensional realm, through wave resonance. They achieve quantum projection of partial consciousness. With the resonance stability stemming from the delicate balance between underlying information entropy and spacetime curvature, due to some anomaly, your brainwaves now resonate at the same frequency as the barrage comments, making them visible to you. We've developed methods to disrupt and even control this data stream. Don't overanalyze this, the author's just making stuff up. I nodded in understanding. That anomaly must be Shijing's reincarnation. Now I really don't know whether to call Shijing lucky or unlucky, I exclaimed. It looks like we can make a killing from this. I should even thank Shijing for this. Bai Hoen chuckled. Miss Jiang, you truly are a fascinating person. Hearing Bai Hoen's serious tone, I couldn't help but steal a couple more glances at him. The dappled light filtering through the sycamore leaves quietly accompanied him. Bai Hoen typed on his keyboard, his voice taking on an eerie tone, if it's possible. A cold glint flashed off his glasses. I'd love to dissect him and study him. My mouth twitched. Bai Hoen smiled faintly. Just kidding. I'm not some mad scientist. By the way, Ran told me you've been nominated for this year's national scholarship again. Yeah, congratulations. His tone was a little hesitant. Perhaps to celebrate your scholarship nomination and project progress, I could treat you to. The dorm door was pounding with urgent knocks. The force shook the entire doorframe. Something clearly couldn't wait. I motioned to Bai Hoen to hold that thought, hastily getting up to answer. I stared in astonishment at the figures before me. It was Su Yinwan and Shijing. 9. My eyes immediately locked onto Su Yinwan. Shijing trailed behind her, gaze averted like some awkward afterthought. Su Yinwan bit her lower lip, looking utterly pitiful. Jiang, I have something I need to talk to you about. Could I come in? My expression was odd. Come in. Su Yinwan got straight to the point, dropping to her knees with a thud. She tugged at my sleeve, looking up at me. Jiang, could you please let me have the national scholarship? Su Yinwan was another nominee. With tearful eyes, she pleaded. I'm not competing with you for anything else, just this one thing. I want to study art abroad, and this is my only chance. I know you're wealthy. This money and honor mean nothing to you. Please don't fight me for this opportunity, just this once, okay? Shijing tugged at Su Yinwan's sleeve, but she wouldn't budge. I lowered my head, cutting off Su Yinwan's wailing. In what capacity are you speaking to me right now? As someone asking for a favor, a classmate, or a poor soul who suffered a great injustice and is fighting against it? I pushed Su Yinwan away. It seems you neither see me as just another classmate, nor do you have the right attitude for someone asking for a favor. So why are you even here? Just to be a masochist? Isn't this the part where you cry and say, let's see who believes me now? Su Yinwan stumbled from the forceful shove, sobbing harder. She stole a glance at Shijing through tearful eyes. Jiang, I was wrong. I'm apologizing. It's my fault, but I was just so scared. You're wealthy, academically gifted. Everyone expects you to win the national scholarship. I desperately need that money. It's my only chance to chase my dreams. There's nothing wrong with pursuing your dreams, so. If you're not wrong, then I am. Her logic completely stumped me. I instinctively reached for the transcript lying on the table. National scholarships are based on this. Prove yourself with your grades. I'm not your mother. Why should I coddle you? Su Inwan faltered, her eyes darting around. But you were born into the Jiang family. You have no idea what it's like for us who don't have money. How hard it is to get a chance to pursue our dreams and change our fate. I remained unmoved. Shoving the transcript in her face, knowing she was in the wrong, Su Inwan ignored me and instead turned to grab Shi Jing's arm. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded, "Brother Shi, say something. I know you're close with Jiang. Could you ask them to help me?" Shi Jing looked pale and gaunt, his haggard appearance worsened by poor eating and sleeping habits. His gaze shifted between the distraught Su Inwan and my radiant self before he suddenly turned away in visible anguish. Refusing to meet my eyes, Su Inwan's face turned deathly pale as she tugged pleadingly at his sleeve. Shi Jing finally turned back, his lips parting slightly. I sneered sarcastically, "What? Expecting my respect?" Shi Jing flushed crimson, choking back his words. He hung his head and pulled Su Inwan away. "Let's go. I'll help you figure something out. There's always a way. We don't need to beg her." Something in those words struck a nerve with Su Inwan. She snapped, she screamed, shoving Shi Jing away, "Don't touch me. Do you even know the registration deadline is next month? Figure something out. That's all you ever say. Where do you get this confidence? Stop acting like you've lived some privileged life. It's easy to talk when you're not the one struggling. I can't believe I actually fell for your I'll be rich act. I've been eating instant noodles and working odd jobs with you every single day. I called you Brother Shi. We grew up together. And you wouldn't even say a word for me in front of her. What good are you anyway?" Su Inwan shot Shi Jing and me a venomous look. Seeing there was no chance of me agreeing, she quickly got up, pushed open the door, and ran out. The male lead claimed he took the female lead's savings for overseas studies for an investment, but his mom found out and spent it all. It's no wonder the female lead is devastated. Poor female lead. The male lead seems a bit unreliable, doesn't he? At the end of the day, it's all that supporting female character's fault. She deserves to die. If she'd just given the male lead the money, none of this would have happened. Watching this farce unfold, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. I told Shi Jing, "Turns out being a hero isn't easy. Screw up, and you're just a laughingstock. Don't get cocky just because you've had a lucky break, you little weasel." True. There are still visionary investors who recognized the male lead's potential and backed him during this period. The progress is just a bit slower, that's all. Just wait until the leads reconcile. It'll prove you completely wrong. Shi Jing looked utterly devastated. The once stately pine seemed to slump as he was about to speak, when Bai Hoen's abrupt voice came through the still active video call. When two selfish people get together, it's no surprise what kind of mess they'll make. He kicked Shi Jing. Shi Jing's head snapped towards his phone, his face slowly contorted, as if he'd just had a sudden, profound realization. He seemed to have found a reason to convince himself. This reason eerily injected him with a vitality named jealousy and madness. Jiang Fuxue, so you have a new lover. Is it because of him that you don't like me as much anymore? Bai Hoen, with his hands clasped and chin resting on them, smiled during the video call. What business is it of yours? Do you even deserve to be compared to me? I glanced at Shi Jing, not denying Bai Hoen's little scheme, and with that, Shi Jing was promptly shown the door. Shi Jing panted like an ox, sputtering three furious fine s in succession. Fine, fine, fine. The door slammed shut with a bang. I flashed Bai Hoen a knowing smile through the video call, playing dumb as I simply said, "Thanks, saved me from wasting breath on him." Bai Hoen gave a slight nod, lowering his eyes in silence. A profound silence fell over everything. Only the rhythmic clatter of Bai Hoen's keyboard remained. 10. After wrapping up my scholarship applications, I turned my full attention to the project I was developing with Bai Hoen. Over the past 6 months, Shi Jing has become a somewhat notorious speculator, with many secretly suspecting he has significant capital backing him. Otherwise, how could he be so well informed? I just smiled and let Shi Jing do his thing. I heard that after he made his first fortune, Su Inwan reconciled with him. Bai Iran watched me hunched over my desk, preparing for the press conference on our latest developments, and couldn't resist taking a deep, satisfying slurp of her bubble tea. "How's the press conference prep coming along?" I put my work aside, joined her, and we took a short break, sharing a sip of bubble tea. Feeling the full sweetness of the drink, I couldn't help but close my eyes in pure contentment. Everything went smoothly. Bai Iran picked up her phone, opened the campus forum, pointed to a post, and asked me, "Then why don't you deal with this? Do you need my help?" I waved my hand. No need, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. Iran looked at me and suddenly smiled. She said leisurely, not at all. Who said our Fushue is heartless? In me the tiger sniffs the rose. You've always admired those who strive hard. It's not that the higher you climb, the harder you fall. You simply leave a glimmer of hope for those fighting to better themselves, don't you? Like how you recently doubled your investment in Jiang family scholarship at Q University. Our eyes met. Then I leaned back on the sofa, stretched out, and said coldly, no, I'm just in a good mood. Because this press conference will announce the results of the project Hoen and I have been working on. We've achieved a breakthrough, allowing us to control the projection of barrages through a special frequency. I experimented on myself and successfully proved its feasibility. On the day I bid farewell to bullet comments, I flipped them off and drew an ant with a special frequency pattern as my parting gift. Those who see others as ants shall become ants themselves. How does it feel knowing your arrogance has brought boundless wealth to the very ants you despised? What can you possibly do to me, a bunch of clowns? After throwing their words right back at them, I hit the block button without waiting for a response. Damn those bullet comments. You creepy lurkers can go talk to yourselves from now on. With the comment chaos handled, Hoen and I immediately dove into researching how to apply this unique frequency for our purposes in new fields. I can already picture the flood of investment offers that'll come pouring in once we publish our findings. Absolutely thrilling. Compared to these achievements and investments, Shijing's little splash is hardly worth mentioning. This wonderful mood is simply delightful. It even made me unusually receptive to Shijing's invitation for once. 11. Sure, Jing asked me out several times over the past 6 months. But I turned him down every time. I haven't seen him in a long time. He stared at me intently. His eyes growing more distorted, filled with the exhaustion of dealing with various power players. His hand trembled slightly. You finally agreed to see me. Are you and that person still together? I stirred my coffee. What's eating at you? You're still the same, always greeting me with these pointless, bitter remarks. Has reality been too harsh on you? Do you regret it? Sure, Jing suddenly clenched his fist. Yes, and no, Jiang Fushue. I'm saying this because we were together for 3 years. I have the means now, so please, break up with him. Okay, I scoffed. 3 years, was that in a dream? His expression froze. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him squirm with unspoken bitterness. Sure, Jing said brokenly. Jiang Fushue, you can't bear to break up with him, can you? Your cruelty toward me. It's all because of that man, isn't it? I knew you couldn't be this heartless to me. You were supposed to be mine. I didn't mind his nonsensical replies. Instead of following his train of thought, I deliberately twisted the knife. Yours, then what about Suyin Wan? He froze, then raised hopeful eyes burning with intensity. She's just like a sister to me. I only wanted to protect her from your bullying. There's nothing between us. I raised an eyebrow. That's not what you said before. Fushue, his eyes were red, like someone who had been working nonstop for some reason and finally couldn't take it anymore. That's because I didn't want you to look down on me. We, the poor, are born inferior to you. I didn't want to always be beneath you. I wanted to have wealth and the same confidence as you. I admit, I got a bit fixated on that. But it's because I love you, and I want to stand beside you as your equal. I suddenly burst out laughing. So, those bullet comments said you lost everything in your past life too, just because you loved me. Sure, Jing's pupils constricted abruptly, picking up my bag. I rose gracefully and patted his cheek with a condescending pity. You never loved me. You loved my money, my power. Only when life slapped you hard enough did you remember my worth. Who knows what karma caught you last lifetime, but greed swallows the snake whole, and I've only ever needed a few methods to handle your kind. Care for an encore this lifetime, be it fresh grudges or old wounds. Terror flashed in Sure Jing's eyes before freezing into pure dread. Then came the rage. It ended with a complete breakdown. He stared at me blankly. You knew, Fushue. I never wanted it to come to this. You knew all along. You forced my hand. You left me no choice. Only by clipping your wings could I make you obey. Isn't that right? I couldn't fathom how his mind made that leap. Maybe I treated him really well in my past life, but that's all in the past now. I turned around. Go get your mental issues treated, a stunted NPD loser who can't even gaslight properly. I sighed. Giving you a chance is just a waste of my time. You want to clip my wings? Go ahead, try. 12. My press conference went ahead as scheduled. This will be a groundbreaking press conference. Brand new ways of socializing, groundbreaking ideas for holographic gaming, revolutionary information storage methods. This frequency has the power to bring boundless wealth and benefit human society. Those who attacked me ultimately became unwitting prophets. their words turning into the very bricks and mortar of my business empire. My net worth skyrocketed, and for a time, I was unrivaled, hailed as the most audacious and visionary investor and entrepreneur. The lights of the press conference flickered on amidst the long lenses and short snouts of reporters from all media outlets. Everything was ready. But just as I was about to step onto the stage, something unexpected happened. The reporters in the audience had varied expressions. The crowd was whispering. I immediately spotted Jing and Su In-wan in the audience. Bai Yiran stormed backstage, absolutely furious. I'm going to flay them alive. Fu Shui, I told you not to be so lenient with them. Look at this. I looked at her phone screen. That trending topic was rapidly climbing the charts. It originated from Q University's campus network, spiraled out of control, and went viral. The news about the Jiang family's youngest female CEO bullying a classmate caused quite a stir. My harsh words towards Su In-wan and Jing, in particular, sparked a heated debate among netizens. Wealth without virtue. Dawn must break on this injustice. Are we ordinary people just meant to be humiliated? What I despise most are bullies. My younger brother developed depression because of school bullying. Those tormentors deserve to be drawn and quartered. Several senior Jiang Corporation directors banded together, launching an internal campaign against my continued tenure, citing confidentiality breaches. Several confidential Jiang Group plans known only to me have been leaked. They're accusing me of criminal conduct. Jiang Group stock prices have been fluctuating wildly in the red zone, showing signs of an impending crash. I gave Bai Yiran's hand a reassuring pat. In a panic, she created 5 alt accounts to rant under a post while scrambling to call contacts to take down the trending topic. I gave her a reassuring look. She gradually calmed down. Taking a deep breath, she said, "Right, I was so furious I forgot. You never go into battle unprepared." 13. Under the spotlight, I stepped onto the stage. Each step carried quiet confidence. The first microphone thrust forward came with blunt, cutting words. "Mr. Jiang, regardless of what you're unveiling today or its potential benefits to humanity, integrity comes first, particularly when you wield technology capable of fabrication, technology that touches on human rights and privacy. Given recent events, how can the public trust you'll genuinely act as a socially responsible entrepreneur?" Jing and Su In-wan, their baseball caps tilted up, flashed me challenging smirks. I laughed too, smiling with unshakable confidence. I reached out and turned off the screen. No comment. The facts speak for themselves. A cacophony of noise erupted. The faint glow of a pinhole camera illuminated the deserted corner. "Jiang, we share the same birthday, yet everyone only remembers you because you're rich. Why is that? Sometimes I really envy you. So today, I'm giving you a big gift." Smack, smack, asterisk smack, smack, asterisk. The repeated, looping sound of self-inflicted slaps silenced all dissenting voices. All that echoed was the incessant slapping sound. I hit pause, and the screen froze on Su In-wan's own hand landing on her face. I smiled. I think the difference between humans and monkeys is that humans use technology, like surveillance. So, Su, my dear classmate who's trying to expose me, are you really going to twist the truth when you don't even know that? No way. Brother sure said those private restaurants prioritize privacy. There's no surveillance at all. Su In-wan's eyes widened in shock. She only realized she'd screamed when the sound escaped her lips. My face remained expressionless. Seems like Jing didn't really know me in our past life either. I fought my way out of the Jiang family. How could I possibly leave no trace? I straightened the microphone in front of me, cleared my throat, and feigned shock, returning the jab. "Are you talking about Jing? I'm sorry, I'm just so shocked. How are you two so close? This is the very commercial spy I filed a request to investigate just a week ago." The moment the words left my mouth, the quiet press conference erupted like a drop of water hitting hot oil, instantly dissolving into chaos. The wailing of police sirens echoed throughout the venue. It all happened too fast. A well-trained legal team descended, bringing justice with them. Everyone was still reeling when a pair of silver handcuffs clicked onto Jing and Su In-wan's wrists. Charges include commercial espionage, illegal fundraising. The chief secretary distributed documents to every journalist present. President Jiang filed a police report a week ago. The individuals involved include several Jiang Group shareholders, with Jing as the primary suspect. As for Ms. Su, her defamatory rumors and the dissemination of false information, exceeding 5,000 reposts, have caused severe damage to President Jiang and the Jiang Group's reputation. The police report was filed just an hour ago. Out of respect for their past school ties, President Jiang initially sought to avoid escalation, but given the gravity of the situation, He must prioritize accountability for Jiang Group's stock value. I chuckled softly, clapping my hands. Like a presumptuous frog seeing daylight, it mistakes the glow for mastery of the game. The hunter's true net had been cast far and wide since Jing last came begging, an inescapable web woven long ago. Now we simply bide our time, waiting to extract maximum value from the prey. Tucking a stray lock behind my ear, I remain utterly composed. Every opportunity was given. The willing bite the hook. From barrage comments to Jing, they've all served their purpose to the fullest. Now that everything's been put to good use, the trash should return to the dumpster. I leaned forward and cleared my throat more emphatically. Ladies and gentlemen, we're postponing the launch by half an hour. Let's save our cheers for the groundbreaking technology then, not waste time on these petty squabbles. I, Jiang Fuxue, am a doer. I don't use flowery language. I will genuinely lead with our cutting-edge technology and let time prove its worth. The audience fell silent once more, then erupted into thunderous applause. In that half hour, some were snapping photos, while others furiously scribbled notes for their articles. It seems Jing and Su Yinwan are about to get their wish and become celebrities. Jing struggled, seemingly bewildered by how things had suddenly come to this. Before he was dragged away, he strained to turn around, his eyes bloodshot like a dying beast, making one last desperate plea. Jiang Fu, his voice abruptly cut off. I raised a hand to my forehead, a faint smile playing on my lips, and mouthed silently, "Who gave you permission to challenge me?" In that instant, Jing felt as if struck by lightning. He realized everything had been my carefully laid plan all along. All strength drained from his body, leaving only a whispered murmur. I could clearly read the shape of his lips. He said, /Jiang Fuxue, you win, you put me back in prison again, /. I chuckled, my eyes filled with scorn and understanding. I replied, /serves you right, /. So, was this how his last life ended too? You haven't made any progress at all. What I fear most is the insatiable greed of fools. What I dread most is the arrogance of the greedy. I dealt with them effortlessly, as if dismissing the most trivial, insignificant matters, and then told the reporters again, "I'll see you in half an hour." In these 30 minutes, lives were turned upside down, but why should I care if they live or die? This game, I emerged victorious. I'm the real winner. 14. The product launch went smoothly. Bai Hoen and Bai Yiran embraced me with the pre-ordered flowers. Bai Yiran wedged herself between me and Bai Hoen, winked at me playfully, then slipped to stand beside me. Bai Hoen and I were standing quite close. Su Yinwan stood before me, a beaming smile on her face, dressed in a similar, low-quality replica of the gown. One moment, he deliberated for a while, then finished what he'd started to say last time. "Miss Jiang, perhaps to celebrate the success of the launch and our boundless future profits, might I have the honor of taking you out for a meal?" I held the flowers, took a deep breath of their fragrance, my eyes narrowing in pleasure, and straightforwardly cut to the chase. "To be honest, you're not really my type." Bai Hoen lowered his gaze, removing his glasses, "but life holds infinite possibilities." I looked into his eyes, the same sharpness, certainty, and confidence mirrored my own. In the end, we had dinner together, but we're not together. In the end, I still couldn't decide whether or not to respond. After all, I really resonated with what Bai Hoen said. Life is full of infinite possibilities, isn't it? Let the past fade away, no dwelling on toxic people or pointless drama. My path ahead holds uncharted territory waiting to unfold. Perhaps new faces will appear, maybe an expansion of the business horizon. Perhaps it's my boundless ambition, brushing off the snows of yesteryear. The future holds so much more in store for me. Step by arduous step. Story 2. Only after my genius ex-boyfriend passed away did I realize he had been suffering from severe depression all along. I received a letter covered in incomprehensible mathematical formulas and 4 words. For Meng Yao, returning to 4 years ago. This time it's my turn to find the solution to the problem and dedicate it to him. Preface. News broke that the youngest Fields Medal winner died from depression. The person in the photo had overlapping old and new scars on their wrist, staining the entire pool with blood. The report stated, "He has been suffering from severe depression for the past 4 years." I simply couldn't believe that such a heaven-favored prodigy could fall to such a state. I was so heartbroken that I fainted, dreaming of high school days in my half-asleep state. Yet another ultimate mathematical challenge was effortlessly solved by Lu Ye's pen, and I murmured in admiration, "Lu Yi, what kind of problem in this world would you consider difficult?" Lu Yi gazed ahead silently for 2 seconds. "Life," I teased him with a laugh. "God Lu, your Chinese failed there. Life is a noun, not a problem." At that time, I didn't understand what those 2 words truly meant to him. For years ago, that was the year we broke up. 1. I woke up to find myself lying on a classroom desk. Beside me, a pair of pale fingers held a pen, writing with fluid grace. I dazedly raised my gaze and saw a profile full of youthful handsomeness. Lu Yi. The hand paused as he stopped writing and glanced sideways at me. Before my brain could fully wake up, I had already recklessly thrown myself forward to hug him. Lu Yi, there are so many things I want to say, but I'm choked with tears. He froze for a few seconds before moving. I thought he was going to struggle, so I instinctively held him tighter. Then I felt a pair of hands gently patting my back, as if to comfort me. What's wrong? I froze for a moment, then cried even louder. Just as I wished I could crush Lu Yi into my embrace, a sudden cough exploded like thunder above my head. Ahem, ahem, ahem. My sobs immediately choked off as my body went rigid. Lu also noticed my stiffness, and the hand on my back changed to give 2 light pats. He explained calmly, "Class is starting." See, lass, is, starting. While I was still pondering the meaning of these words, another thunderclap suddenly sounded above my head. Class started 10 minutes ago. The physics teacher's familiar yet unfamiliar gruff voice was right beside my ear. You too, come with me to the office. 2. I stood in front of Teacher Gao's desk, tactically bowing an apology first. I'm sorry, teacher, I was wrong. I just had a nightmare. Teacher Gao looked rather speechless. All right, stand properly and speak while looking up. I stood up, raised my head, and heard old Gao gasp in shock. Ahem, well, how about this, you go home and rest today. And we'll talk about anything else tomorrow. I couldn't have asked for more. Grabbing Lu Yi, who was standing nearby, I said, thank you, teacher, goodbye then. Before I could turn around, I saw old Gao glaring at my hand with wide eyes. Guiltily, I withdrew my hand from Lu Yi's grasp, let out an awkward laugh, and pushed him out the door. On our way back to the classroom, before I could speak, Lu Yi suddenly stopped in his tracks. Wait here for me. I was puzzled and looked at him in confusion. His gaze swept across my face. Your eyes are swollen. Remembering how my eyes puff up like walnut shells whenever I cry, I quickly covered them with my hands. Through the gaps between my fingers, I saw Lu Yi enter the men's restroom nearby, emerging moments later with a neatly folded handkerchief in his hand. He handed me the dampened, cool handkerchief. This will feel more comfortable if you apply it. I took the handkerchief and thanked him. Then heard him say, I'll go get your school bag for you. I stood rooted to the spot, staring blankly at his retreating figure as my eyes grew moist again. Lu Yi, who's always so gentle, why on earth would someone like him suffer from depression? 3. I spent the whole night researching, trying to understand what depression feels like: oppression, loss of interest, insomnia, helplessness, despair. Every description I read stabs at my heart, yet in my eyes, none of these seem to have anything to do with Lu Yi. Since entering school, Lu Yi had always been out of sync with everyone else. He began participating in national and international math competitions at age 6, never once defeated, and had been known as a child prodigy since childhood. By his first year of high school, he had already received invitations from top universities like Stanford and Princeton, frequently attending academic conferences we couldn't even begin to understand. He carries too many halos, isolating everyone around him. As everyone at school describes, Lu Yi is like an exiled immortal untouched by worldly affairs, hence the nickname God Lu. The only reason I have any connection with this deity is because I was fortunate enough to be his deskmate since freshman year. I had a crush on him, but only mustered the courage to actually speak to him in the second semester of freshman year. Even after getting together with him, I could only talk to him more. We never even held hands. If I had to describe our relationship in one word, it would be platonic. The only time either of us overstepped boundaries was during the breakup. I've always looked up to him, so I never knew. When I rushed into his arms crying in class, it turned out he would hold me instead of pushing me away. 4. The next day at school, my eyes were even more swollen. Old Gao was startled. You little girl, don't tell me you're heartbroken. My dad and old Gao were high school classmates, so we're quite close in private. Stop teasing me. I'm not dating anyone. How could I be heartbroken? Old Gao burst into laughter. It's adolescence. Teachers understand, especially since Lu is so outstanding. My heart skipped a beat as old Gao suddenly changed the subject. But, main girl, did you know Lu Yi has already been accepted early by Princeton? Of course I knew. In my past life, Lu Yi went to Princeton for college. As for me, no matter how hard I tried, I only got into a top domestic university, worlds apart from Princeton. So, main girl, if you really start dating early, you're in for some hard times. I walked out of old Gao's office clenching my fists. Damn it. Old Gao actually thought I had a secret crush and hinted that this relationship wouldn't work out. Little did he know, following last life's timeline, I'd be together with Lu Yi in just 2 months. Right now, I'm indeed not together with Lu Yi yet, but that's just a matter of time. I curved my lips and returned to the classroom, lying on the desk staring blankly at the empty seat beside me. Lu Yi doesn't need to take the college entrance exam, and can often skip school. Sigh, such are the privileges of genius. During the second class break, just as I was regretting forgetting to ask Lu Yi for his contact information yesterday, my best friend came knocking. Yao Yao, Yuan Wan darted in front of me, leaning down without bothering to lower her voice. Yao Yao, I heard you forcibly hugged God Lu. My eyes widened in shock as I immediately raised my hand to cover her mouth, never expecting her to grab my wrist instead. Don't get worked up. Don't get worked up. I desperately signaled her with my eyes. Don't talk nonsense, Yuan Wan. That idiot, completely misunderstood. She leaned close to my ear and asked excitedly, did you confess to God Lu? I met Lu Yiqing's clear gaze behind Yuan Wan. Quick question, would sacrificing my best friend work in this situation? 5. I wonder if Lu heard it or not. I pretended nothing had happened and greeted him, but he just nodded indifferently, as if he wasn't the one who had taken me home yesterday. Many times in the past, I was intimidated by his coldness like this, but this time, when it came to the afternoon PE class, I pulled him towards the small grove behind the sports field. Lu Yi, I have something to tell you. On the way, I remembered the day in my past life when Lu Yi and I confirmed our relationship. That evening during class self-study, I was just turning to ask Lu Yi for help with a difficult math problem. Just as Lu Yi turned his head and leaned close to me, the entire teaching building suddenly lost power. The whole class fell silent for a moment, then erupted into chaotic uproar, with many people excitedly pounding their desks and shouting. The desk behind me knocked against my chair, making me stagger sideways, only to be steadied by Lu Yi. In the darkness, I lifted my head, and my lips brushed against his cheek. The hand supporting my arm stiffened slightly, and amidst the surrounding clamor, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. As if possessed, I said, Lu Yi, let's be together. Only after speaking did I realize what I had just said. Flushing crimson, I tried to pull away and cover it with a joke, but Lu Yi held me firmly in place. He said, okay, I don't know when Lu Yi started liking me, but I know I couldn't forget about him for the next 4 years. Once you've liked Lu Yi, you can never like anyone else again. I stopped under a big tree in a deserted corner and turned to ask him, did you hear Yuan Wan's last words? Lu Yi nodded. If what she said was true, would you agree? Lu Yi looked at me and remained silent for a moment, then spoke in a very solemn tone. I will. I suddenly let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Lu Yi, let's be together. 6. After he recovered, my eyes inexplicably welled up with tears again. Lu Yi, I had a nightmare last night. Remembering the image of him lying cold in the bathtub in my past life, I couldn't help but hold his hand to draw warmth. I dreamed that a very close friend of mine was seriously ill but didn't tell me, and left on their own. In a voice almost pleading, I asked cautiously, Lu Yi, if you ever get sick in the future, you must tell me. Okay. Lu Yi paused for a moment, but answered without hesitation, okay. I wanted to relax and smile, but the corners of my lips trembled instead. Cold. He was about to take off his school jacket when I raised my hand to stop him. I shook my head. Not cold, but my eyes hurt a little. Could you blow on them for me? I tilted my head up toward him, eyes open and smiling as I waited for him to act. Lu Yi blinked, behaving uncharacteristically obedient. The moment he slightly lowered his head, I stood on tiptoe and pressed a kiss to his lips. Our first kiss across 2 lifetimes, brief as a touch, gone in an instant. See, this is a girlfriend's privilege. Watching Lu Ye's dazed expression, I felt quite pleased. Just as I was about to pull away, Lu Yi suddenly lifted his eyelids and wrapped his arm around my waist. Seen up close, his eyes were more dazzling than the cosmic galaxy. Power is mutual. After speaking, he lowered his head and gave me an awkward yet deep kiss. 7. I noticed that Lu Yi at this time seemed somewhat different from the Lu Yi I knew later. In our past life together, Lu Yi had almost never taken the initiative between us. Many times, I would speak at length without getting any response from him, only to look up and find him staring blankly into space. After staring at him in frustration for a while, he would finally snap out of it, and I'd ask him, were you thinking about math problems again just now? Then Lu would sincerely say to me, Meng Yao, I'm sorry, I was with him for 4 months, and the phrase he said to me most often was, Meng Yao, I'm sorry. At that time, I didn't know about the existence of depression. I truly felt he had wronged me. He clearly promised to be with me, yet he would spend entire days lost in his own world, not even glancing at me. When I had a cold and fever, even the teacher could see how miserable I was, yet he remained immersed in mathematics. When I was sad about my declining grades, he wasn't at school but shining brightly at some mathematics academic forum, even on my 18th birthday, after reminding him multiple times daily for half a month. He still stood me up on the day. It's just that I'm not the type to demand or make a scene. I tried to swallow all my grievances, never expecting it would only leave me with a lump in my throat. But the current Louis would care about my swollen eyes from crying, would ask if I'm cold, would kiss me, even if he couldn't do these things. I'm now firm enough not to mind at all, yet I'm still so grateful that I came 2 months earlier. Perhaps his depression was still relatively mild at this time. Maybe in a safe period of depression, or perhaps he hadn't developed depression yet I couldn't help but realize something must have happened to Louis during these 2 months. 8. I began to pay close attention to Louis's daily condition. What struck me most profoundly was undoubtedly the watch on his left wrist. I remember clearly in the photo, beneath that very watch, lay terrifyingly dense scars. Seizing the moment when Louis paused his writing, I boldly grabbed his left hand and fixed my gaze on that watch. Upon closer inspection, I realized something was off about this watch. This isn't a watch you can buy on the market. It looks more like it was handmade. Its movement is completely occupied by 5 gears of varying sizes, while the remaining gaps on the dial are filled with densely packed, spike-like fragments of unknown material. There doesn't seem to be anything particularly special about it. Yet it gives me an extremely uncomfortable feeling, making my chest feel heavy just by looking at it. I examined it carefully and pretended to ask Louis out of curiosity. Louis, where did you buy this watch? It's so unique. My mom's. I froze. Your mom? Yeah, she's a mechanical engineer, so it was made by his mother. I breathed a sigh of relief, but new questions arose. I heard Lou also came from a single-parent family. His mother was an elite woman who not only raised him but also had the means to buy an apartment in an upscale neighborhood and fund his overseas education. I saw her at a parent-teacher meeting. She had stylish, elegant wavy hair and features so delicate she looked like a refined lady from a Republican-era painting. But in his previous life when Louis committed suicide, all his personal connections were exposed. Even Lao Gao received media interview requests. Yet among all this related information, there was no mention of his mother. I suppressed my emotions. That aunt is really impressive. I've never seen a handcrafted watch before. I'd love to try it on. May I? Louis lowered his gaze to look at the watch, then said quietly, my mom won't let me take it off. My heart clenched. He didn't want me to see what was hidden beneath this watch. 9. I knew exactly what this meant, but could only deflect with a laugh. Alright, I decided to take a risk. Louis, can I come to your place for tutoring this weekend? Teach me math. Okay. I thought Louis would refuse, but after a moment of consideration, he agreed. Alright, actually, I already knew Louis's contact information and home address, but to avoid raising his suspicion, I asked for them again. I even put on a fierce act. First rule of dating, you must reply to your girlfriend's messages and calls. Got it? Okay. Also, you shouldn't hide things from your girlfriend. Tell her everything first. Okay, whatever I said, Louis would always agree. He's so well behaved, it makes my heart itch. I glanced around the noisy classroom during break and crooked my finger at him. Come here. Lou also leaned in with confusion, and I cupped my hands over my mouth, moving closer to his ear. I gave his ear a little peck. Boyfriend, this is your reward. Seeing Lou's ears instantly flush red, I contentedly lay back down on the table. At that time, I almost drowned in the sweetness of love, optimistically thinking that misfortune could be erased in advance. Until Saturday, I went to the psychiatric department of the hospital to consult a doctor about depression, and coincidentally saw Louis coming out of the neighboring department. I stood still for a long time, and only after Louis's figure completely disappeared from sight did I muster the courage to walk to the entrance of the department he had just exited. I looked up and saw the doctor's profile on the wall. Specializes in schizophrenia, depression, anxiety disorders. My heart instantly sank to the bottom. 10. In the afternoon, I went to Louis's house. He was still wearing the same casual clothes he had on when going to the hospital this morning. Louis, what were you doing all morning? As I observed Louis's home, I casually asked him. Louis bent down to help me put on slippers, using other proofs to solve the Poincaré conjecture. I tightened my fingers around the backpack strap. Have you been at home all this time? Louis paused before replying. Yeah. My heart was shrouded in gloom, but remembering the doctor's words this morning about how some depression patients exhibit social withdrawal, I mustered up some courage for myself. Lu Yi, were all these robots made by your mom? Lu Ye's home had the rare gray-blue color scheme, simply decorated, with many metal robots of varying sizes and shapes placed in the living room. Lu also went to the kitchen to pour me water. Yeah, she's at work today. I walked up to a robot that was as tall as a vase, its head covered with a cardboard shell on the back. Curious, I tilted its head, and a blood-red clown-like grinning face suddenly came into view. Terrified, my face turned pale. Before Lu came out, I quickly restored the robot to its original state and stepped back to keep my distance. When I looked up again at the circle of robot figurines in the living room, I suddenly felt an eerie and horrifying sensation. Let's go. We're heading to the study. Suppressing my palpitations, I followed Lu Yi into the study. There was nothing strange in the study, but as I pulled my chair close to sit beside Lu Yi, I still felt an indescribable unease. That bloody smiling face and Lu Yi kept alternating in my mind. Distracted, I had barely put down a few strokes when Lu Yi grasped the back of my hand. He frowned slightly, looking at me with concern. What's wrong? I could only lie. I had another nightmare last night. Lu Yi stared at me for a few seconds. Just when I thought he had seen through my lie, he suddenly raised his hand to cradle the back of my head, pulling me slightly closer, then placed a soothing light kiss at the corner of my lips. Feeling better now. 11. In that instant, I was utterly convinced that nothing couldn't be healed. I beamed and nodded emphatically. The study time passed swiftly. When the sun set behind the mountains, my mom called me home for dinner. I packed my things. Lu Yi, what are you having for dinner? He hesitated uncharacteristically when answering. There should still be dumplings in the fridge. I asked, puzzled. Isn't your mom coming back to cook? No, she's not coming back today. Being a single mom must be tough. And seeing Lu Yi grow up in such circumstances makes my heart ache for him even more. Suddenly, I made a big decision. Lu Yi, come to my place for dinner. I want you to see my home too. Lu Yi froze. Is that okay? Of course, I said without hesitation, taking his hand. My parents are very hospitable, more than hospitable. They were practically excessively hospitable. I just brought Lu Yi inside and introduced him with one line. This is my deskmate, Lu Yi, Comrade Xiao Yang. This looks obsessed fellow. Quickly wiped away his drool and promptly dragged Lu Yi to the dining table. Oh my, you must be Xiao Lu. Come, Auntie just happened to make some delicious food. Comrade Lao Meng initially maintained a stern demeanor, but after seeing Comrade Xiao Yang and Lu Yi chatting back and forth, he couldn't resist butting in with some gossip. Are you that genius mathematician mentioned in the newspaper? Lu Yi replied in a very measured and unusually restrained manner. I dare not presume. Comrade Lao Meng waved his hand and piled a large portion of pork onto his plate. Good lad, eat more, eat more. At the table for four, I became the extra one, clutching my untouched bowl in confusion. I accidentally met Lu Ye's gaze peering through the vegetable dishes. For 2 lifetimes, this was the first time I saw Lu Yi smile. The feeling in that moment was, I'm willing to share my parents with him. 12. Doctors say that people with depression usually experience significant low mood. I've noticed that Lu Ye's mood seems normal recently, but I still dare not let my guard down. I became alert when Lu started skipping school frequently. I messaged him occasionally every day, and though he didn't always reply promptly, he would eventually respond with explanations. But after he didn't show up for a whole week, I started to feel panicked. I deliberately sent him a WeChat message at 3 a.m. I declare that mathematics is the enemy of my life, /angry. Attached a picture of a complex math problem without much thought. I waited anxiously for 2 minutes. And unsurprisingly yet unexpectedly, Lu Ye's reply came. He sent a picture showing 3 different solutions to that math problem, each written neatly and in detail. I couldn't spare a glance. Lu Yi, why aren't you asleep yet? Doing problems? My hands began to tremble. Do you have insomnia? Yeah, my heart was pounding wildly, and it took me a long time to calm down before I could type. Then let me coax you to sleep, okay? But before I could send it, I received another new message from Lu Yi. Even before seeing it, I somehow had a premonition. My gaze moved upward, seeing that sentence. Meng Yao, I'm sorry. 13. Like a spell that opened Pandora's box, I was caught off guard by the misfortune that came my way. In a fluster, I made a voice call, trying to steady my voice. Lu Yi, why are you saying sorry to me? After a long silence, Lu Ye's weary voice came through. I don't know. As if subconsciously, he added another sentence. I'm sorry. I bit my lip. Lu Yi, there's no need to apologize. Insomnia is completely normal. Look at me today. I couldn't sleep either because of math problems. I tried to keep my tone light, but my words came out all jumbled. Insomnia is like a cold. When you're sick, you can always get better. I realized something, paused, and asked aloud, Lu Yi, have you been taking medication? Both insomnia and hypersomnia are common symptoms of depression. I remembered seeing Lu Yi at the hospital that day. Yeah. I suddenly calmed down. Then does listening to me talk make you uncomfortable? How about I keep you company and chat with you? Okay. I just held my phone and lay on the bed, starting to chatter away. Do you remember that idiot Yuan Wan? I told her the other day that I'm your girlfriend, and she didn't believe me, even said I was daydreaming. Lu Yi, next time let's show off our love in front of her and make her eat her words. Okay, these past few days. My parents keep mentioning little Lu at home, saying a good cabbage got ruined by a pig. You wouldn't believe it, they actually said I'm the pig. Lu Yi, do you know why my parents don't object to me dating early? Without waiting for Lu Ye's reply, I continued on my own, because my dad and mom started dating early too. Haha, I heard that when my dad pursued my mom in senior year, it caused her grades to drop. Comrade Lao Meng still has to kneel on the washboard for that even now. Ha ha ha. I laughed heartily, yet tears had already silently soaked the pillow. I sniffled and said with a grin, Comrade Xiao Lu, come to my place for dinner in a couple of days. Alright. Lu Yi remained silent for a moment before replying, alright. I wiped my tears and continued to chatter cheerfully about other things, even laughing twice when getting excited. I don't know how long I'd been talking, but my eyelids grew heavier and my voice fainter. Lu Yi hadn't made a sound for a long time. Thinking he'd fallen asleep, I could barely hold on either, beginning to drift off. In the end, I kept mumbling the same thing over and over. Lu Yi, it'll be okay, I'm here, it'll be okay. Before completely sinking into the chaotic haze, I faintly heard a sigh. He said, Meng Yao, don't cry, I can't kiss you. 14. I dreamed of the first day of high school when I first met Lu Yi. That day, Comrade Lao Meng insisted on driving me to school, but the navigation messed up and made me late. I heard the opening ceremony sounds from the playground and rushed to find my classroom to drop off my backpack first. Just as I ran to the classroom door, I collided head-on with a wall of flesh that nearly sent me flying, but fortunately that person caught me by the waist. I'm sorry, I stammered out apologies in a fluster, then looked up to see Lu Ye's breathtakingly handsome face. Later I rushed to the playground and saw him giving a speech as the freshman representative. Only then did I learn that his name was Lu Yi. Standing on the stage in formal attire, he appeared handsome and radiant, with striking features, while I remained hidden in the crowd. My heart skipped a beat. 90% of the girls in the entire school had a crush on Lu Yi. The crowd of girls trying to squeeze to our classroom door just to catch a glimpse of Lu Yi grew so large that they had to form a line, eventually forcing the school to send teachers to shoo them away. Taking advantage of the proximity, one girl from our class confessed her feelings to Lu Yi on the third day. At that moment, I was sitting right beside Lu Yi. Watching as that girl handed him a love letter, Lu Yi politely expressed his thanks, but instead of accepting the love letter, he handed the girl a piece of paper in return. He said, if you can prove it. All the girls in the school were in an uproar. Solving the problem on it would mean being with Lu Yi. A wave of math problem solving swept through the campus, until someone looked it up on Baidu and everyone realized belatedly, that problem has a name, it's called the Riemann hypothesis. No girl dared to approach Lu Yi anymore. I quietly tucked away the white paper with the copied problem, sealing it inside my math textbook, then secretly swore eternal enmity with mathematics. 15. Woke up with a start from the dream. After hastily packing up, I asked the teacher for leave and took a taxi straight to Lu Ye's home. After hesitating at the door for a long time, I still couldn't rest easy and finally rang the doorbell. When the door opened and I saw Lu Yi standing there unharmed, I couldn't help but throw myself into his arms. Good morning, Lu Yi. Lu Yi clearly didn't expect my sudden appearance, but he still returned my embrace. Meng Yao. His voice sounded so weary. When I pulled away and saw the dark circles under his eyes, my heart ached. Let me stay with you. Okay. Lu Yi never refused any of my requests. He stepped aside and pulled me into the room. The air conditioning was on indoors, and I noticed he was wearing a turtleneck sweater. The combination felt somewhat incongruous to me. I placed the breakfast I brought on the dining table. My mom makes really delicious pumpkin porridge. Just as I finished setting the breakfast table with light movements, sudden footsteps came from the doorway, followed by the sound of a key turning in the lock. I froze, looking at Lu Yi. Lu grabbed my wrist, his voice deep. Meng Yao, my mom is back. Before I could understand the gravity of his expression, he urgently pulled me and shoved me into his bedroom. "Wait here." Before closing the door, he said, "Don't open it." I stood dazedly behind the door, hearing the click-clack of high heels outside that suddenly stopped at a certain point. Muffled, fragmented speech began intermittently, and I only caught one clear sentence: "Why don't you just die?" Then came strange, indistinct metallic clanging sounds, accompanied by the noise of something heavy being dropped. Unable to obey, I instinctively swung the door wide open. First, I saw a slender figure standing by the dining table, seemingly twisting some wire in hand, and kneeling shirtless before her was Lu Yi. He knelt on the hard marble floor, head hanging like a lifeless puppet, his hair drenched in sticky fluid. It was that bowl of pumpkin porridge. My breath hitched, my foot barely making a tiny movement. Lu Yi suddenly raised his head and looked at me. He was looking at me with a look I could never forget in my lifetime, yet dare not recall for the rest of my days. He was begging me not to go out, begging me not to look. 16, with all my strength, I slowly closed the door, covering my mouth. I slid down against the wall, tilting my head back to hold back tears. Through the door, I heard the muffled sound of metal striking flesh, and the hate-filled words, "It's all your fault. It's all your fault." At that moment, I truly hated myself. I hated my helplessness, hated my understanding of Lu Yi, hated my past life. That was the longest and most painful time of my life, and the thought that this might just be an ordinary fragment of Lu Yi's decade-long life made me feel even more pained, until who knows how much later, when Lu Yi crouched in front of me, it still felt somewhat unreal. My vision was too blurred to see his face clearly, yet I could still somehow perceive his heartache. He was aching for me. "Meng Yao, I'm sorry." He gently wiped away my tears with his fingertips. "I didn't know she would come back today." I grasped his fingers, hastily wiping my tears to examine his body. There were no scars on his face, water droplets clung to his hair, and he had changed into a black shirt, clearly having cleaned up. I noticed his collar was awkwardly and unpleasantly raised high, and as I realized something, a sudden chill ran through my entire body. With trembling hands, I reached for his collar, my voice choked with tears. "Lu Yi." This time, it was Lu Yi who grasped my fingers. He sighed. "Not good looking." I stared at him without speaking. Lu Yi reluctantly let go of his hand. When I saw the red marks on the fair skin, my hand trembled uncontrollably, yet I stubbornly examined that fresh scar over and over, along with the two older-looking rings beneath it that appeared recent. I finally understood. Lu Yi always wore high-necked sweaters when others were still in thin shirts, not because he feared the cold. Holding my breath, I lifted the hem of his shirt again. What I couldn't see clearly from a distance before, the crisscrossing scars covering Lu Yi's body, now lay exposed before my eyes. I couldn't even bear to touch the wound with my hand, afraid it would hurt him. Why would his own mother? I choked up. "Lu Yi, does it hurt?" Lu Yi smiled at me. "If you feel the pain for me, then I won't feel it anymore." 17. This is by far the longest speech Lu Yi has ever said to me. He told me about his mother. His father was abusive, and his mother left home with him when he was 1 year old. For a single mother, making a living in an unfamiliar city was as difficult as climbing to the sky. She survived by scavenging through trash piles during the day, teaching herself mechanical engineering from scrap metal. Life was hard, but his mother would rather go days without food or water just to give him a birthday with a cake. Exhausted as she was, she still took him to the park near their home every evening, never letting other children bully him. When he was 8 years old, perhaps because of a heavy rain, or maybe just a sneeze, his mother suddenly flew into a rage, accusing him of being the reason she became like this, blaming and resenting him. The next day when sober, she cried and begged for his forgiveness. Later, this cycle of resentment, scolding, and apologies repeated several times, escalating to beatings followed by apologies, until eventually she would experience memory loss and couldn't recall what she had done. Anxiety, mania, mild schizophrenia, selective amnesia. "Meng Yao, she's just sick." Lu Yi comforted me with the words I once said to him, "Just like a cold, it can be cured." She hadn't had a relapse for a long time before this. I couldn't speak, opening my mouth several times. "Does she know now? Once you wake up, you'll forget. Are you keeping it from her? She won't be able to handle it." "What about you?" I asked. "Lu Yi, what will you do then?" "I can handle it." "How can you handle it? Don't you realize you're sick yourself? She'll drag you into the abyss sooner or later." How I wish I could blurt it out without a care, but I can't. The doctor said if a depressed person still talks to others about their problems, it means the situation is somewhat optimistic, but I can't feel happy about it at all. I held Lu Yi's hand. "Lu Yi, she needs to go to the hospital. I've been arranging doctors for her. No, she needs to go herself, she's too proud to accept this. That year, 17-year-old me didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I said to him, Lu Yi, let's give it a try. After a long contemplation, Lu Yi chose to place immense trust in me. Alright, let's try. For many years afterward, whenever I recalled this conversation, I couldn't fall asleep. I've carried the guilt of those words for a lifetime. 18. Lu Yi's mother was admitted to the hospital on a day in early November. On the day she was taken to the hospital, I hid under a tree outside watching Lu Yi talk with her. She wasn't wearing makeup, her bare face pure and innocent like the most harmless angel, and I was utterly captivated. Bathed in the early autumn morning sunlight, she suddenly turned her head in my direction and gave me a gentle yet breathtaking smile. How strange. I found I couldn't bring myself to dislike her anymore. Lu Yi began shuttling between the hospital and school every day, saying his mother's condition was improving day by day, so both Lu Yi and I firmly believe that she will soon recover and be discharged from the hospital. Meanwhile, Lu Yi's condition has been improving day by day, with his depression gradually shifting from moderate to mild, now having minimal impact on him. Lu Yi said he doesn't plan to go abroad until his mother recovers, and he'll attend university domestically first. So my goal is to get into that top-tier domestic university he's aiming for. I studied like crazy, squeezing in time to date Lu Yi. On the night the teaching building lost power, I secretly kissed his cheek in the darkness. When the lights came back on, it felt like I could see countless bright lamps illuminating our future. Squinting my eyes, I asked a question I'd always wanted to ask. Lu Yi, why do you like me? Lu Yi was momentarily stunned, then raised his pen to draw a coordinate axis on the paper. He dotted many irregular black points in the blank space, then drew a diagonal line through the middle. I was puzzled. A univariate linear regression equation. Lu Yi nodded, pointing at those scattered black dots. This is my existence. He pointed at that line again. This is your significance. Actually, I didn't understand, but it didn't stop me from giggling and immediately bragging to Yuan Wan. Yuan Wan looked at me like I was an idiot, who knew even geniuses could be so cheesy with their sweet talk. I huffed proudly, you just don't understand Lu Yi's romantic side. Not only did Yuan Wan laugh at me, but old Meng and comrade Xiaoyang also joined in mocking me. I often studied until dawn, and they'd joke that I was risking my life for romance. My parents may appear tolerant and open-minded, but I know perfectly well if my relationship ever interfered with my studies, no matter how wonderful Lu Yi was, they'd never approve again. Only by letting them see me improving will they believe this is a healthy relationship. Back then, I was full of confidence in myself and Lu Yi, completely forgetting that when Pandora closed the box, she left hope inside. 19. In the March of spring. Only 101 days remain until the college entrance examination. The day before the anniversary of my breakup with Lu Yi in my past life, I sent him my usual morning greeting as always. At first, I didn't mind not receiving his reply, thinking he was too busy visiting his mother at the hospital. When he didn't come to school in the afternoon, I called him in confusion. Several unanswered calls made me start to worry, but it was my grandmother's birthday that day, and our family had agreed to gather at her place after I finished school in the evening. Undeniably, prolonged peace had dulled my alertness. I didn't go looking for Lu Yi right away. That night at 10 o'clock after returning from Grandma's house, as I watched those unanswered messages pile up one by one, I felt a terrifying palpitation. I waited until there was no movement outside and my parents had gone to rest before sneaking out of the house. Just as I tiptoed past the living room, my hand not yet on the doorknob, a deep voice suddenly came from behind. It's so late, where are you going? My heart stopped, and I turned around. The living room was unlit. Old Meng stood by the glass door connecting the balcony, the cigarette in his hand emitting a faint crimson glow. Old Meng usually fooled around at home, but when it came to matters of principle, he was more serious than anyone. Even through the darkness, I could sense the authority and solemnity emanating from him. I know lying is useless, so I can only selectively conceal the truth. I'm going to find Lu Yi. I clenched the hem of my clothes. Haven't been able to reach him all day. I'm a bit worried. Old Meng's tone was uncharacteristically cold. Then call the police. Finding people is the police's job, not something for you to worry about by going out at midnight. Old Meng knew me well. He could tell I was hiding something, just as I knew him. I understood exactly how he would react upon learning the truth. He wouldn't accept it. I pleaded, Dad, when I was 18 and pursuing your mother, I never let her go out alone at night, He stubbed out his cigarette and walked toward me, without a reason. You're not stepping through this door, I have no other choice. Lu also has depression. I was shamefully close to tears again. Dad, I'm sorry. But I have to go find him. I turned the doorknob, trying to make a quick escape. But he still grabbed my arm. We stood in silent confrontation for a few seconds before old Meng released his grip. Put on your coat, I'll go with you. Dad has a car. 20, halfway through the drive, it started to rain. It began as a drizzling rain that gradually intensified, culminating in the roar of thunder. I remembered breaking up with Lu Yi in my previous life. It was on a rainy day just like this. We had made plans to have dinner together after school. But that day I waited from sunset until the moon hung high in the sky, yet Lu Yi never showed up. This wasn't the first time Lu Yi had stood me up, but the spring rain that day was unusually heavy, the night wind exceptionally cold, and for some reason, I felt particularly wronged. Lu Yi's indifference, broken promises, and calmness kept replaying in my mind. I walked home in the rain and developed a high fever that night. I texted Lu Yi to break up. Not receiving his reply left me utterly disappointed, further solidifying my resolve to break up with him. Lu Yi never showed up at school again after that, and I couldn't help but feel worried and suspicious. But one day a month later, he suddenly came to school and said those words, "I'm sorry," to me again. I noticed he didn't look well, and my heart ached for a moment, only to hear his next words. "But I won't break up." His words were unusually domineering. And I couldn't understand how he could be so self-righteous. I said angrily, "Lu Yi, this isn't up to you." Lu Yi gripped my wrist tightly, his eyes rimmed red. He said, "Meng Yao, I will die." At that time, I failed to recognize it as his cry for help. I stared at him in shock, equating him with those obsessive freaks who threaten to die after a breakup. How could you be this kind of person? As I grew older, I regretted ever harboring such doubts about Lu Yi, but what's done is done. And I don't think Lu Yi, who was already renowned back then, would need an apology from me. By that time, I had become even more unworthy of him. I had only ever seen Lu Yi's glorious side, never realizing he was trapped in dire straits and had once seen me as his lifeline. And I, before he plunged into the abyss of eternal damnation, gave him one final push. Not finding anyone at Lu Yi's home, we drove to the hospital where his mother was. As we passed the park at the neighborhood entrance, a feeling came over me, and I got out of the car. Through the hazy curtain of rain, I saw Lu Yi curled up in the space beneath the slide, like an unwanted child. I ran up to him, my trembling hands unsure where to place themselves. Lu Yi raised his head, his eyes hollow and empty. His voice remained as calm and faint as ever, but mingled with the sound of rain, it seemed fragmented and desolate. He said, "Meng Yao, I don't have a mother anymore." 21. Lu was also taken home, given the medicine prescribed by the doctor, and fell into a deep sleep. It was already the early hours of the morning. During the night, he began to run a high fever intermittently, murmuring unconsciously, "It's all my fault, it's all my fault." My heart ached unbearably, consumed by guilt I couldn't escape. I stayed awake all night watching. Lu Yi's fever broke, but he showed no signs of waking. Old Meng kept vigil outside the room all night, and at dawn he bought breakfast and came to call me. I sat across from him in a daze, faintly aware of what he was about to say. "I've asked for leave on your behalf." I froze, not expecting this opening line. "Today's your 100-day pledge rally for the college entrance exam. That old Gao is really stubborn. It took me quite some talking to get your leave approved." Sipping his porridge, he said calmly, "Kid, let's hear it. What are your plans?" I thought he would scold me, and I also thought he would make me break up with Lu Yi. I just didn't expect him to throw the initiative to me. I swallowed hard, my voice hoarse. "I want to stay with him." For how long?" "Until he gets better." He looked up at me. "Even if it takes months, or years." I met his gaze without flinching, "Or perhaps indefinitely." Old Meng's pupils contracted slightly. He averted his eyes and let out a light chuckle. "So what are your plans for the college entrance exam? Are you giving up on it?" At that time, I was actually just one step away from China's top universities, just needed to stretch a little further to reach it. With a pale face, I said, "I can study at home. I can study while he's asleep." But the doctor just mentioned the risk of suicide, asking us to strengthen supervision and raise awareness, preferably providing 24-hour monitoring. "Do you know what that means?" I silently lowered my head, then raised it again after a few seconds. "I can take a leave of absence from school. Or I can repeat a year." Old Meng's eyes turned cold. I was afraid, but I spoke with absolute determination. "But I cannot give up on Lu Yi." Old Meng's voice also turned cold. "Then what do you expect your mother and me to do? How dare you assume we'd allow you to make such an absurd decision?" I hung my head in shame again. "Dad, I'm sorry. Please have some pity for Lu Yi. I'm your father, not his. You will be eventually." Old Meng laughed in frustration, got up from the dining table, and paced back and forth a few steps. "You're not sober right now. We'll talk when you're clear-headed." Old Meng made as if to leave, but I called out to stop him. "Dad, I'm completely sober now. I once asked you if you regretted pursuing Mom back then, causing her to miss getting into a top school. You said Mom might have regretted it, but you never did, though it may be shameful. There are always certain people or things in life that you would unwaveringly choose when faced with a decision. Dad, I'm sorry, Lu Yi is my unwavering choice." Old Meng paused behind the door back then. I don't know what he was thinking. He said, "If this is your decision, then I understand." 22. I'm fortunate to have such open-minded and rational parents. Since childhood, they never imposed any ideology or choices on me, but instead showed me respect in every way. I know how unfilial this is. But I saw Lu Yi staring blankly out the window, not saying a word, like a walking corpse. I've lost Lu Yi once before. I can't lose him again. I patted his head and called out to him. For half an hour, he showed no response. I stepped away for a moment to get some food, but he suddenly grabbed my hand again. It was a very light touch. I stopped and asked softly, "What's wrong?" Lu Yi's gaze was unfocused. I asked again, "Do you want me to stay with you?" He didn't speak. But I just sat down beside him and never left again. I kept chattering to him about some funny things, and as I talked, Lu Yi fell asleep again. He began to become lethargic, vomiting after eating, and spent each day in a daze without speaking. On the third day, when I went out to pour hot water and returned, I found Lu Yi was unexpectedly not in bed. He sat at the study desk, holding a pen with his head bowed over a blank sheet of paper. For a moment I thought he had recovered, so I approached. Lu Yi looked up at me, his face blank with confusion. After several days, the first words he spoke to me were, "I think I've forgotten how to do math." The second sentence is, "I might be sick." The third sentence is, "Meng Yao, do you still want me?" 23. I held Lu Yi, telling him over and over how much I needed him. He took his medicine and fell asleep again. I got a call from Lao Gao, who told me how spectacular the scene was on the 100 Days Pledge Day. He told me to take good care of myself and return to school soon. My parents haven't informed the school about my leave of absence yet, and I couldn't bring myself to say it either. They didn't pressure me, as if they had already accepted it, but deep down I don't want to give up either. While Lu Yi was asleep, I crouched in the living room studying on my own. Thinking this way I could balance both. I had another nightmare about Lu Yi's suicide from my past life. After waking up in panic, I rushed into the room but couldn't find Lu Yi. Breaking into a cold sweat, I barged into the bathroom and saw him lying in the bathtub. This scene is too cruel. I cried and called his name over and over. He also cried, murmuring repeatedly, "I should just die. I should die. My heart is broken." 24. Since then, I haven't dared to leave Lu Yi's side for a single step. I gathered all potentially harmful items in the house and locked them in other rooms. I sleep by Lu Yi's bedside, needing to watch him fall asleep first before daring to close my eyes. If it weren't for my mom bringing us meals, sometimes I wouldn't even have time to eat. I'm so exhausted, but I can't let Lu Yi sense any of my negative emotions. Even with my parents, I put on a brave face in front of them, pretending I'm fine. I feel deeply depressed, but I've never thought of giving up. I used to think Lu Yi was someone who couldn't be measured by common standards. He possesses the most clear-headed and rational mind in the world, with terrifying emotional self-control. How incredibly strong must his willpower be, to remain virtuous for over a decade while his mother was ill, and even complete what's considered one of history's greatest mathematical researches while battling severe depression for 4 years. In the battle against depression, it was mostly him saving himself. My presence didn't seem that important, but that sudden storm made me suddenly realize my significance to Lu Yi. During the 100-day pledge ceremony before the college entrance exam in my past life, Teacher Gao had the whole class write their thoughts on slips of paper, put them in message bottles, and hand them to him, saying we could come claim them years later. What I wrote back then was, "The road is long, the journey far. Though my heart yearns, no distance bars." Back then, I was still desperately trying to catch up with Lu Yi's footsteps. This year I missed the 100-day pledge ceremony, so I found a small glass bottle at Lu Yi's place and wrote a note myself. I wrote, "Meng Yao is Lu Yi's homecoming." After writing it, I put it in the glass bottle and boasted to the sleeping Lu Yi, "Lu Yi, I understand your confession now." I fell asleep leaning on his bedside, and in my drowsiness, I felt someone touching my face, so precious, so gentle. 25. A week later, something incredible happened. Lu Yi regained consciousness. He would get up to eat breakfast, take his medicine, and even say thank you to me. I held him close, nuzzling his face. "Lu Yi, it'll get better. When Lu got slightly better, I felt like I came back to life too. 2 days later in the afternoon, Comrade Xiaoyang came to deliver food, and I happily shared with her. Shortly after, she received a call. What? Mom fell and was hospitalized. I stood there stunned, watching her hang up and rush off in a panic. Did something happen to Grandma? I was so worried I didn't know what to do, when Lu suddenly appeared behind me. For the first time, he took the initiative to ask me, "What's wrong?" I pulled myself together, and no, it's nothing, let's eat. Lu Yi raised his hand to cup my face, pulling me close before his eyes. Meng Yao, I'll get better. He pressed his forehead against mine, his gaze seemingly regaining its vitality once more. Believe me, alright. I believe. How could I not believe? I said joyfully. I believe. I trust Lu Yi the most. Lu Yi planted a kiss on the corner of my lips. 26. In the evening, old Meng suddenly came by. Your grandmother was asking about you at the hospital. Don't you plan to visit her? Mom told me not to go this afternoon, but I've actually been worried about it the whole time. It's just, Lu must be asleep by now. I'll keep an eye on things. You go and come back quickly. I looked at Lu Ye's peaceful sleeping face and hesitated for a moment. Alright, Grandma is also my family. I can't help but worry. Besides, I have complete trust in old Meng. I didn't expect that when I rushed to the hospital, there was no one there at all. I called my mom, and she stammered, Yao Yao, I'm sorry. A chill ran down my spine as I turned and ran back to Lu Ye's house. Lu Yi was gone. Old Meng sat in the living room smoking, watching coldly as I frantically searched the house like a madman. Only when I had searched enough, lost hope, and collapsed helplessly on the ground, did he finally speak. He's gone. I looked at him with reddened eyes. To Princeton. I couldn't believe it, my voice hoarse with accusation. Dad, you're committing murder. The moment the words left my mouth, seeing old Meng's suddenly frosty expression, I immediately regretted it. He even helped handle the funeral arrangements for Lu Ye's mother. After all his indulgence towards me, how could I say such things to my own father? Completely flustered, I buried my face and sobbed. I'm sorry. I'm just so worried about Lu Yi. They'll find him the best psychologists in the world. For a genius like him, there are many people who'd want to save his life. Old Meng squatted in front of me and patted my head. Yao Yao, this was his own decision. 27. The powerlessness of adolescence seems to be just like this. You have boundless courage, fearless of dangers, but none of it can compare to a plane ticket in reality. Old Meng said, as long as I can get admitted, he would spend his last penny to send me to Princeton. To get into a top domestic university and secure an exchange spot at Princeton, you'd at least need to be a junior or senior, 3 or 4 years. Lu Yi, can you wait that long? Lu Yi asked me to trust him. I don't know where he gets his confidence from. I don't even believe in myself. That fool. What if I don't pass the exam? I used all the time I used to spend with Lu Yi to study, determined not to give any room for wild thoughts. On the day the college entrance exam ended, I thought I could pass, but I couldn't feel happy about it. Yuan dragged me to the graduation party and told me to invite Lu Yi out. None of them knew what Lu Yi was going through. They only thought he was still shining brightly somewhere not far away. I felt inexplicably sad. In this lifetime's graduation ceremony, Lu Yi was still missing from the photo. Starting over, I changed nothing. I fell into deep self-doubt and guilt, dreaming either of Lu Yi or his mother every day. In fact, I've always believed that I was responsible for Lu Ye's mother's death. I feel like I'm on the verge of depression. I lost my appetite, spoke less and less, until a few days later when old Meng suggested taking me out to relax. I'm not really interested, but I don't want him to worry. The car stopped in front of the embassy, and I hadn't even realized it yet. Old Meng pulled me out of the car. Go, get your visa. I stared at him blankly, not understanding. Old Meng looked disdainful, pathetic, to be in such a state after just a few days. He pulled out a plane ticket. It was for New York. I'll buy this one for you in this lifetime. The next ticket, you earn it yourself. After saying it, he immediately regretted it. No, your father is poor. This money will have to be deducted from Lu Ye's future bride price. Old Meng muttered to himself. My eyes reddened as I threw myself into his arms. How fortunate I am to have the best father in the world. 28. The plane landed in New York, and Lu Ye's personal doctor's assistant came to pick me up. His name is Robert, and he tried to communicate with me in broken Mandarin. Hello, I'm here to act as a scarf driver for the doctor's main force assistant. At this moment, I can only feel grateful that I studied English well in college. The drive from New York to Princeton takes just over an hour. Perhaps it's the anxiety of nearing home. The closer we got, the more restless I felt. Even missing several responses to Robert's words, he smiled and said, "Patrick is doing fine, don't worry. He seems different from other patients. He attempted suicide once, but called for help at the last moment, which is very rare among depression patients. Maybe it's because he's a genius, you know, geniuses are always special. Lu Yi is no genius, he's just a big idiot. He left me without saying anything, making me travel thousands of miles just to find him. I could hardly resist the urge to scold him or even hit him, but seeing him standing dazed in the yard, all my anger melted away. I rushed over, braking at the last second, and reached out to cover his eyes from behind. I said in English, "Guess who?" He froze, and after a long pause, replied hoarsely, "Meng Yao." That's not right." Lu Yi gripped the back of my hand, his fingers trembling. "Meng Yao." Helpless, I asked in Chinese, "Who is Meng Yao?" It seemed like this was the only word he knew, yet he stubbornly repeated, "Meng Yao." I released my grip and stepped in front of him. Only then noticing his bloodshot eyes. "Remember this, Meng Yao is your future wife." I grabbed his collar and said fiercely, "If you dare die again, I'll become a widow." 29. Princeton started spreading legends about me. They say there's a Chinese girl who chased her love across oceans, all the way to Princeton. Doctors and nurses in the hospital kept pestering me for gossip every day. Unable to bear the harassment, I finally said, "Lu Yi owes my father a plane ticket." So my father sent me to demand a bride price from Lu Yi. Well, the legend then became my father's, but when these words reached Lu Yi's ears, he immediately took them seriously. He handed me his bank card and asked naively, "Is this enough?" My mind was full of question marks as I saw all those zeros in his digital account. I was shocked. "How do you have so much money?" "Won some awards from a few projects, plus payments for decrypting codes for the military. I never used this money. I never expected my boyfriend to be this wealthy." "Enough for what?" Lu Yi tilted his head as he looked at me. "To marry you." My face turned bright red, and it took me a long while to find my voice. "Lu Yi, I'm not even of legal age yet," he said seriously. "Then let's make a reservation." His depression was gradually improving, but he needed to stay at Princeton for research, while my domestic admission notice had long been issued, on the day I was returning to China. Lu Yi insisted on forcing his card into my hand. It's hard to refuse such kindness, so I accepted it. While packing my luggage, I accidentally found a small glass bottle in Lu Yi's bedside drawer, very similar to the one I once used to slip a note into at his place. Curiously, I opened it and saw my own handwriting on it. "Meng Yao is Lu Yi's homeward path." Beneath this line, there was Lu Yi's elegant and refined handwriting, which read, "If life has an answer, she is the only solution." Extra Story 1. Lu Yi's love letter. 3 years later, Lu Yi, the youngest Fields Medal winner, gave an interview. "Mr. Liu, I heard your previous research focus was always on the Poincare conjecture. Why did you suddenly switch to the Riemann hypothesis 3 years ago?" A reminiscent expression appeared on Lu Yi's face. "Because of a love letter." He smiled. "This is my love letter to my beloved." The media all thought Lu Yi also had a lover who was equally a genius mathematician. Even I was starting to believe it. I interrogated Lu Yi. "Which lover did you send that love letter to? Why didn't I know about it?" Lu Yi mentioned that when a girl confessed to him in their first year of high school, he had thrown the Riemann hypothesis problem at her. During my stay at his place, one day he noticed a piece of paper falling out of my math book, with a date written on it. Yeah, it was the date I vowed to wage war against mathematics. I rushed to Lu Yi's bedside table to search. And sure enough, found that piece of paper. Beside me, a pair of pale fingers held a pen, writing with fluid grace. 6 also, / dedicated to Meng Yao, / extra chapter 2 Old Meng and Little Lu. In senior year of high school, Lu Yi had just regained clarity from endless exhaustion. Meng Yao lay by his bedside, exhausted and asleep. He stared at her, lost in thought, when Old Meng entered, leaning against the door. He took a drag of his cigarette. "Princeton's medical care should be decent, right?" He looked at Lu Yi and said, "I'm just giving you a heads up." Before graduating from university, Meng Yao struggled with whether to take the domestic postgraduate entrance exam or strive to go to Princeton to accompany Lu Yi. At the dinner table, Old Meng said she had already spent her junior year on exchange at Princeton, and since she would eventually have to go abroad to accompany Lu Yi anyway, it would be better to stay in the country for a couple more years. Meng Yao thought it made sense and was about to agree when Lu Yi suddenly grasped her hand. "Princeton has a good environment, especially in healthcare. Haven't you been having frequent headaches lately?" Old Meng across the dining table glared with fierce eyes. Lu Yi turned his head and smiled gently at him. "Just a heads up, Dad." Story 2. On the day my childhood sweetheart, Leong's son, was forced by his father to get engaged to me, his white moonlight, Song Anran, died in a car accident on her way to see him. After the engagement, he spent every night socializing in different nightclubs, allowing rumors to spread wildly. This made me the biggest laughingstock in the circle. In the face of my questioning, Leong Sun just sneered, "Since you were willing to sacrifice a life to marry me, no matter how wronged you feel now, you have to endure it." Until an accident occurred, both he and I were reborn back to the eve of the engagement, without hesitation. He took Song Anran's hand and publicly broke off the engagement with me. Later, I announced that the engagement would be held as scheduled. Leong Sun informed me indifferently, "Forcing me to marry you is useless. I won't attend the engagement banquet." I was silent for a moment, torn between whether to tell him now that my new fiancé was his little uncle. I stared in a daze at the familiar scene in front of me. Leong Sun's grandfather, who was sitting in the main seat, slowly opened his mouth. "Considering that you're about to graduate from university soon, it's time to set the date for your engagement." Only then did I belatedly realize that I had been reborn. Before I could sort out my chaotic thoughts, a familiar voice came from beside me. "I don't agree." Leong Sun's eyes and brows were cold and distant as he said something completely different from what he had said in his previous life. "I have someone I like. But it's not you, Xia." He glanced at me. "This engagement can't happen." I suddenly understood. I wasn't the only one who had been reborn. Grandpa Leong suppressed his anger. "In what capacity are you challenging me?" Leong Sun smiled and looked at me in a casual tone. "I've said I don't like you. You still insist on marrying me. Are you being cheap?" The next second, Grandpa Leong threw his chopsticks at him. "You scoundrel." Leong Sun stood up unhurriedly. "You're forcing me to marry her just because you want a child from the Leong and Yu families, right?" There was a hint of frivolity in his smile. "Otherwise, how about I take her to a hotel tonight? If she gets pregnant, I won't have to marry her, right?" Leong Sun successfully angered his grandfather, who threw the water cup in his hand mercilessly at the corner of Leong Sun's forehead. The boy smiled self-deprecatingly. Before leaving, he glanced at me without much emotion. Xia, go and bring him back for Grandpa." Grandpa Leong breathed heavily and said to me with difficulty, under the urging of everyone. I had no choice but to follow him out. My original intention was to go straight back to school. But as soon as I left the restaurant, I bumped into Leong Sun and his white moonlight. "Song Anran, what else do you want?" Leong Sun calmly protected Song Anran behind him and looked at me distantly. In his previous life, Song Anran received an anonymous text message and learned that Leong Sun and I were going to get engaged. That's why she ran out and had the car accident. Leong Sun always believed that I sent that text message. I spoke in a businesslike tone. "Grandpa wants you to go back." Song Anran nervously tugged at his sleeve. "Son, don't go." Leong Sun stroked her head reassuringly before turning back to me and saying, "I made it very clear just now. It's impossible for me to get engaged or married to you." Impatience was hard to hide in the boy's eyes. "Also, please stop pestering me." His determination actually made me feel relieved. In this life, I probably wouldn't have to be tied to him anymore. My love for Leong Sun had long been exhausted in his previous life when he publicly embarrassed me by hugging other women one after another. I originally wanted to bypass the two of them and go back to school first, but Song Anran stopped me. "You Xia, can you promise me something?" I paused. "Promise what?" She bit her lip uneasily. "Promise that you'll never pester a son again. Last time I went to check the hygiene in your dormitory and accidentally saw your diary. Didn't it say in there that you like a son?" Song Anran's voice was weak but firm. "Now, as a son's legitimate girlfriend, I'm asking you to promise to stay away from him. Please understand." I took a step closer to her and looked directly at her. "You rummaged through my things. In high school, I always kept my diary in the drawer." Song Anran stepped back, looking a bit timid. "It was just a routine hygiene check." Leong Sun frowned slightly and protected her behind him. "Enough, you Xia." "She didn't mean it," he soothed her in a low voice. "She doesn't need to promise anything. I don't like her, so it's useless for her to pester me." With that, he was about to take Song Anran away. That diary contained a lot of my unspoken secret love. How could she rummage through other people's things without permission and still act so calm? I chased after them onto the road and grabbed Song Anran's arm. "Don't you think you should apologize?" Song Anran bit her lower lip stubbornly. "I don't think I did anything wrong." I laughed out of anger. "Does your upbringing tell you that it's okay to rummage through other people's things?" Perhaps this sentence had a great impact on her. As soon as I finished speaking, her eyes immediately turned red. and she looked on the verge of tears. Enough, Yu Xia. Liang Sun irritably pulled my hand away. The next second, the red light at the corner turned green, a car rushed towards us. Before we could dodge, Liang Sun, probably influenced by the shadow of his previous life, pulled Song Anran away immediately. The shrill sound of the emergency brake was very close. Fortunately, I was only slightly scratched on the ankle and fell to the ground, and ran. Are you hurt? Liang Sun held Song Anran and checked her as if he had survived a disaster. The two were so immersed in their tenderness that they didn't even notice the driver leaving while cursing. After confirming that she was okay, Liang Sun finally came to his senses and noticed me trying to stand up from the ground. The streetlights were flickering. I looked up and stared at Liang Sun without saying a word. After a long silence, he suddenly chuckled. He asked me with great interest, "Do you think this is karma?" He always thought that I was the one who caused Song Anran's car accident in his previous life, even though I had explained it countless times. I withdrew my gaze from the two who had left, endured the pain, and stood up. I patted the dust off myself. Fortunately, I didn't like him anymore and wouldn't be sad about it either. After that, Liang Sun's grandmother called me to their house several times. She earnestly advised me not to argue with Liang Sun. No matter what I said, Grandma seemed not to listen. A son is more stubborn now, except for his little uncle. No one can control him. Liang Sun's little uncle, Duan Wenye. He was also the actual person in power in the Liang family and the only one who had the same surname as the old master Liang. My only interaction with him was probably a year ago. When I was drunk, I played truth or dare and kissed a strange man in the booth next door. When we met again later and Liang Sun introduced Duan Wenye as his little uncle, I wished I could bury my head in the ground. As Grandma Liang was talking, a glimmer of an unreliable idea suddenly flashed in her eyes. She clapped her hands and muttered, "That's it." At that time, I didn't understand what she meant. It wasn't until a week later that I was tricked by Grandma Liang into the hotel owned by their family. I was wearing wet clothes and was stuffed with a rune card by Grandma Liang. Go up and wait for a while. Someone will bring you clean clothes later. But when I swiped the card to open the door, entered the room, and turned on the light, I was completely stunned. An unusual smell filled the room. The man's tie was hanging loosely on his shirt, and he was leaning against the head of the bed, not even looking up. His voice was incredibly hoarse. "Get out." It was Duan Wenye. I immediately realized what the smell was. I turned around and tried to open the door, but it didn't move at all. It was obviously locked from the outside. "What's going on, Grandma Liang?" I said. "Get out. Can't you understand?" The man's voice was already filled with impatience. "Woohoo, I want to get out too." I can't open the door anymore." I urgently continued to turn the doorknob and retorted in a low voice. Duan Wenye's breathing paused. Then there were approaching footsteps. "Why are you here?" He pulled my arm and made me face him. Only then did I feel the temperature of his palm, which made me tremble. "Little uncle," I called him obediently, trying to remind him of who I was. Duan Wenye didn't respond. He lowered his eyes and looked at me. "I heard that Liang Sun broke off the engagement with you." I nodded, not knowing why he was asking this now. He seemed to take a step closer to me, and his Adam's apple rolled slightly. "So, you don't like him anymore?" Without realizing it, I had also inhaled a large amount of the gas in the room, and my reaction was a bit slow. Without thinking too much, I just answered slowly, "No, I don't." He smiled indifferently, and his tone didn't seem like he was asking a question. "Is that so?" I slowly raised my head and looked at him helplessly and straightforwardly. The temperature in the air was slowly rising, carrying a trace of restlessness. I felt an indescribable stuffiness. I instinctively searched for a way to relieve it. Mr. Duan." A faint smile appeared on Duan Wenye's lips. He raised his hand and gently rubbed my cheek. "Are you feeling uncomfortable?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at his thin lips that were so close. I was wondering if they were as cool as the jelly taken out of the refrigerator. "Answer me." The emotions in Duan Wenye's eyes fluctuated, but the rationality in his words made me seem like the impatient one. I stood on tiptoe and put my arms around his shoulders, but his phone rang inopportune. Duan Wenye clicked his tongue softly and was about to take out the phone and throw it away, but when he saw the caller ID, he stopped and finally answered the phone. "Little uncle, you're back in the country." It was Liang Sun. I regained a bit of my senses. I looked at Duan Wenye blankly, but my action of kissing him stopped. Duan Wenye hummed. With his other hand, he pressed against my lower back, pulling me towards him. The distance between us was narrowed again, and our lips were almost touching. "Then where are you now, little uncle? I'll come to find you." Liang Sun's voice came from the other end of the phone. I panicked for a moment. When I grabbed his shirt, I accidentally bumped into his collarbone. Duan Winya hissed softly, "Be gentle, okay?" I was dizzy and apologized in a low voice. "I didn't mean to." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. "Little uncle, who are you talking to?" I seemed to have heard this voice before. I stared at him nervously with wide eyes. Duan Winya hung up the phone with a "your little aunt" and didn't focus on this. I had already lost my senses. All I could think about was the person in front of me. Duan Winya picked me up and walked further into the room. As he walked, he asked with great interest, "Do you want to do something?" Duan Winya sat down on the edge of the bed and held me on his lap. I nodded eagerly and tried to lean in and kiss him. Duan Winya smiled and turned his head away. He pinched my chin to stop my action. "I'm getting old. I can't play the game of taking advantage and then leaving." "Oh. Is being 6 years older than me enough to be described as getting old? So, if you don't take responsibility, I will definitely call the police. Do you understand?" I was like someone standing under a plum tree, with a dry throat and lips, and my eyes full of longing as I looked at the sweet plums. Looking at the plums couldn't quench my thirst, unless I was allowed to eat the plums, after I promised him several times. The plum was finally brought to my mouth. I gently kissed him. But because I was inexperienced, I pulled away as soon as our lips touched. Duan Winya instinctively leaned in to follow, but stopped just before our lips met. "If you won't be able to kiss me anymore." His confident tone faintly carried a hint of coaxing. "Open your mouth and come closer yourself." I put my arms around his neck and leaned in again, but this time, I couldn't escape easily. Instead, I was entangled by him. 6, on this side. Liang Sun hung up the phone and just arrived at the door of his house. He was still thinking about the female voice on the phone just now. It was very familiar. He pushed the door open while deep in thought. Grandma Liang, who was sitting on the sofa and eating an apple, looked at him as if she had seen a ghost. "Ah, a son, why are you here?" "There are no classes in the department, so I came back to visit you." Grandma Liang then realized something was wrong. She immediately took out her phone to check. She found that the message she sent to Liang Sun had somehow been sent to Duan Winya. It had been more than an hour now. Grandma Liang's mind went blank. She had originally planned to invite Liang Sun to the hotel, but unexpectedly, she invited, "Please don't try to match me and Yu Xia anymore." Liang Sun was already prepared for Grandma's long speech, but this time, she was uncharacteristically silent for a long time. Then she agreed, "I plan to try to match Xia Xia with your little uncle." Liang Sun's hand paused as he scrolled through his phone. It was hard to describe this feeling. In the few years he was entangled with Yu Xia in his previous life, he had subconsciously regarded her as his fiancée, his possession. Now, upon hearing the news that she might marry someone else, he suddenly felt an indescribable sense of irritability. So, he just casually refused on Yu Xia's behalf. "It won't work. My little uncle doesn't like Yu Xia. And Yu Xia also has someone she likes." Grandma Liang sneered. "You like Song Anren. Why do you care so much?" "I originally planned to go see Song Anren when you got engaged and tell her the news of your engagement to make her give up completely." Liang Sun was stunned. His phone slipped from his hand. "What did you say?" So, the text message in his previous life really wasn't sent by Yu Xia. 7. What he didn't know was that the little uncle he thought didn't like Yu Xia was now threatening and coaxing me. The Duan Winya I knew was always a man of few words. I didn't understand the meaning of this series of questions and conversations at this moment. He pried open my hand that was tightly gripping the pillow and interlaced our fingers. Looking down at me from above, he asked, "Who am I?" I tried to avoid answering. He then forced me to look at him. Sweat dripped down from the man's wet black hair on his forehead. His clear eyes were especially sexy at this moment. He slowly asked for my consent. "Do you want to look in the mirror?" I had no choice but to give in. "Duan Winya." "Say it again." "Duan Winya." "It's really sad. Why didn't I fall asleep like in the novels? I have to face all this soberly." Fortunately, I was facing away from Duan Winya and was just about to play dead. "Don't pretend. I know you're not asleep." His disdainful voice shattered the dignity I had painstakingly maintained. "Don't panic." I closed my eyes, determined to keep up the act of being on the verge of death. Duan Winya sneered softly. "Forget it, let's continue." Then, my ankle was grabbed. I immediately became agitated and opened my eyes, awake. He looked down at me. Heat gradually crept up to my ears. I pressed my lips together and remained silent. Duan Winya got up and casually wrapped his bathrobe around him. He walked to the cabinet and turned on his phone. A few seconds later, he turned the screen towards me. Looking at the big 110 on the screen, my blood pressure almost soared. The man had a half smile on his face. "Remember what I told you before, Was he going to sue me for getting services without paying? Just as I was struggling with how to respond, the door was suddenly banged on. Yu Xia, I know you're in there, open the door, I have something to talk to you about. It was Liang Sun. Troubles came one after another. I stared at the door in a panic, and everything was in chaos. Liang Sun was still chattering outside. Duan Wenya's patience ran out. Frowning slightly, he directly opened the door. What's so important that you have to disturb us now? Liang Sun was stunned for 2 seconds. Uncle, why are you here? Didn't Grandma say that Yu Xia is here, at this moment? I was curled up in the quilt, feeling desperate. Although I hadn't heard Duan Wenya's reply yet, I had already anticipated the upcoming storm in my heart, until, Uncle, is your girlfriend in there? Liang Sun couldn't help but think of the previous phone call. Most likely Grandma remembered it wrong. I'll go and ask at Yu Xia's house again. Then he smiled knowingly. I won't disturb you and my little aunt anymore. Give my regards to my little aunt for me. I didn't come to my senses until Duan Wenya closed the door again. Was a crisis that seemed almost inevitable resolved by Liang Sun's straightforward and not-so-smart IQ. 9. Out of the corner of my eye, Duan Wenya walked towards me. I quickly picked up my phone, trying to find something to do to prevent him from bringing up what had just happened. What are you doing? I pursed my lips. Buying medicine. Duan Wenya raised his eyes. What kind of medicine? I hesitated for 2 seconds and didn't hide it. Contraceptive pills. A soft laugh came from above my head immediately. His lazy eyebrows and eyes were filled with satisfaction. But the words he said were extremely heartless. Why are you taking them? I secretly clenched the quilt, feeling a bit indignant. Because of you. What about me? Under Duan Wenya's expressionless face, a faint sense of grievance welled up in me for no reason. I stopped arguing with him and lowered my head in silence to continue searching for the medicine. The next second, my phone was snatched away and thrown aside. The man rubbed against the slightly red corner of my eye, and his voice was uncharacteristically low and gentle. Stop fussing. I wore protection. I was stunned and tried hard to recall if there was such a part. Thinking I didn't believe him, Duan Wenya patiently added, every time. He also raised his hand and pointed at the trash can, smiling and asking, otherwise, do you want to count? I didn't really count, but I finally recalled some fragmented memories. With the help of Grandma Liang's special effect fragrance, I seemed like I had never seen a man in my life. Duan Wenya avoided my kiss and coaxed in a low voice, wait a moment. I leaned in again and murmured, I can't wait, Duan Wenya. He took a deep breath. His hand seemed to be reaching for something on the bedside table. I touched his ear again and asked disappointedly, don't you want to kiss me anymore? The rationality in Duan Wenya's eyes was on the verge of collapsing. You can't smell this fragrance anymore. I was confused. After a moment, before he kissed me again, he finally said one more sentence to clear up my confusion. I can't stand it. 10. A series of embarrassing situations had made me numb, so, when Duan Wenya offered to carry me to the bathroom, I only hesitated for a moment. Then I stretched out my hands towards him. Then I'll trouble you. Duan Wenya let out a soft laugh. He let me bury my head in his neck and walked towards the bathroom. Sure, you're welcome. That day, Duan Wenya still asked me again if I wanted to take responsibility for him. He saw my hesitation, but he didn't force me to make a choice again. He just said, your father's company is currently having problems with its capital chain, and Liang Sun has cancelled the engagement. If nothing unexpected happens, he will immediately find a new marriage partner for you. 11. Early the next morning, on the way home, I kept thinking about what Duan Wenya had said. However, when I met Liang Sun downstairs of my home, that matter was temporarily put aside. There was exhaustion from staying up all night in the boy's eyes, and his voice was even colder than the morning mist. Explain. What did you do last night? Not answering your phone and not going home. I averted my gaze. It has nothing to do with you. After coming out of the hotel yesterday afternoon, since I hadn't rested and was too tired to go home and deal with my father, I went to the nearest apartment under my name, but there was no need to explain all this to Liang Sun. When Liang Sun approached, the chill emanating from his clothes became even stronger. Has nothing to do with me. He gave a faint smile. Yu Xia, the cancellation of our engagement hasn't been announced to the public yet, nominally. I'm still your fiancé. Does your staying out all night really have nothing to do with me? Liang Sun's familiarity in saying this stemmed from the previous life. There was also such a situation in the previous life. During my internship, I accompanied my supervisor on a business trip for a day on short notice and didn't inform anyone. On the third day, I saw Liang Sun's figure downstairs of my apartment. At that time, there were still lipstick marks on his neck that hadn't been wiped clean. But he still angrily questioned me about where I had been staying out all night. The man in front of me overlapped with the image in my memory. I looked at him with a sense of absurdity. You took Song Amran away in public, and that was also before the cancellation of the engagement, wasn't it? Liang Sun stared at me for a long time, unable to hide his annoyance. He coldly curled the corners of his lips. Do you know what I hate most about you? His gaze seemed to be scrutinizing and also seemed to be criticizing. It's your pettiness, always being so calculating and not hiding your jealous nature at all. Don't you think you're incredibly vulgar, Yu Xia? I was stunned for a moment. I was just stating the facts to refute him, but I didn't expect that in his eyes. I was jealous. Liang Sun shook his head and stepped back to create a safe distance from me. I thought I had misunderstood you. Now it seems that even if you hadn't done that thing, you would still only be jealous and petty. You really can't compare to Anran. Finally, he left me with these words and gave me a disappointed look. Liang Sun, I called out to the person who was turning around to leave. Even if I'm jealous, it's not for you. You're really full of yourself. Don't come and bother me again. If you come to me once, I'll call the police once. After saying that, I walked towards the apartment without looking back. Jealousy and losing one's composure. I had heard these words countless times in the previous life. Liang Sun's attitude towards me changed from fierce accusations at first to casual sarcasm later. Now, after separating all my emotions towards Liang Sun and looking at it from an outsider's perspective, thinking back on all the past events, I realized that I had wasted too much unnecessary time being entangled with Liang Sun. 12. After we parted that day, Liang Sun unilaterally announced the dissolution of the engagement. Duan Wenye was right. The next day, my father couldn't wait to introduce a new marriage partner to me. My initial plan was to meet the person and just go through the motions, but an accident occurred right at the beginning. To be honest, I really like your type. In the restaurant, the blind date partner sitting across from me, the young master of the Dong family, started a truth-telling session on his own, but I couldn't join in, because if I were to be honest now that I couldn't eat anything because of the stench of his feet that couldn't even be covered by his 30,000 yuan shoes, most likely he would get up and leave. Then I would be severely scolded by my father. While I was feeling worried and depressed, a familiar voice picked up his words. Who do you like? I instinctively looked up immediately. Duan Wenye had his suit jacket draped over his forearm. The top button of his shirt was casually undone, and he wasn't wearing a tie, looking a bit disheveled. There was a kind of romantic aura cultivated by the feasting and socializing in the business world. He looked at the young master of the Dong family with a not-so-friendly smile. Brother Wenye. The young master of the Dong family stood up abruptly. What a coincidence. I'm on a blind date. Almost instantly, a burning gaze landed on the top of my head. If I were to convert Duan Wenye's gaze into a real temperature, I felt that I should already be bald from the heat. Would Brother Wenye like to join us for a meal? Seeing that Duan Wenye didn't leave, the young master of the Dong family politely asked. Unexpectedly, he really sat down brazenly. You continue with your blind date. Just pretend I'm not here. The young master, he glanced at Duan Wenye and then looked at me, struggling to speak. Overall, I'm quite satisfied with you. But I have a point that I really care about and want to ask you. Duan Wenye picked up the fork and idly played with the broccoli on the plate. I retracted my gaze and nodded at the young master of the Dong family. Is your virginity still intact? I let out an ah and asked. What? He smacked his lips and looked a bit embarrassed. You know, the first time. Because I value this very much. Duan Wenye stopped his movements. My hand hanging under the table couldn't help but clench. A sense of discomfort like being overexposed seemed to be overwhelming my breath. Just as I was about to speak, out of the corner of my eye, Duan Wenye's fork was thrown onto the dining table with a not-so-light force. Wah, what's wrong? Brother Wenye, is the food not to your taste? I'll order something else for you. Duan Wenye let out a cold laugh. No, I think you're quite interesting. He looked at the young master with an unreadable expression. Someone who sleeps with different women every night. Where do you get the nerve to ask a girl you just met for the first time to remain chaste for you for 20 years? Huh. The young master of the Dong family blushed from being scolded but still thought he was in the right. Brother Wenye, you don't understand. The Yu family is no different from selling their daughter now. I just think she looks good, so I lowered my standards. To be honest, even if I ask her to follow the 3 obediences and 4 virtues and take care of the family and the children after marriage, she, Yu Xia, can only comply. I listened in silence. My hand had already reached for the soup in front of me. I thought that in the next second, this bowl of soup would be poured over his head. I had endured it all night and really couldn't stand it anymore. Such an idiot should just get as far away as possible. Duan Wenye seemed to see what I was thinking. The soup in front of me was taken away by him. Duan Wenye placed the soup in front of the young master of the Don family and smiled, raising his hand and pointing, "Look at yourself. Can you see what kind of person you are?" The next second, he suddenly pressed on the young master of the Don family's neck and pressed his face against the edge of the soup bowl. A trace of overbearing arrogance flashed in Duan Wenye's eyes. "She doesn't even like me. Who do you think you are? You're just a down-and-out person who relies on your grandfather's foundation to maintain your dignity." Duan, cough cough. Duan Wenye finally let go of the young master of the Don family, who had choked on 2 mouthfuls of soup. He sat back in his chair and slowly wiped the soup splashes on his hand. Without looking up, he ordered, "Get lost. Tell your father to come and explain to me in person tomorrow." It wasn't until that person left that he looked up at me. At that time, I was resting my chin in my hand and looking at him with a smile. The old man let out a rather awkward cold snort. "What are you laughing at? You just slept with me. And on the other hand, you immediately went on a blind date. I haven't even settled the score with you yet." Hearing him mention this, I did feel guilty. 13. Without the stench of the young master of the Don family's feet, I regained my appetite. I ate and drank a lot of wine. By the time it was time to pay the bill, I was already drunk. "It's okay, Mr. Duan, I'll pay the bill. Let me do it, let me do it." I brought the traditional virtue of fighting to pay the bill to the extreme. Duan Wenye, the waiter, however, had good professional ethics and smiled politely. "No need, miss you, Mr. Duan always charges it to his account." I stopped the action of bringing out my payment code and blinked. Duan Wenye didn't give me time to react and walked directly to my side. "Can you still walk on your own?" I thought about it for a moment and let my face become as thick-skinned as possible. "Well, if you carry me, I can reluctantly agree." Duan Wenye smiled softly. In public, he bent down and picked me up, and then left calmly. The familiar refreshing smell on the man invaded my nostrils after a long time. It instantly swept away the listlessness that I had been feeling after being affected by the young master of the Don family for nearly an hour. My nose almost touched Duan Wenye's collarbone. I couldn't help but get closer and sniff. Duan Wenye saw this and said in a flat tone, "Did I forgive you so that you could act coquettishly?" Although he said this, he hugged me tighter. I was drowsy in his arms, until a familiar voice came. "Uncle, why are you with Xia?" I opened my eyes sleepily from Duan Wenye's neck. Liang Sun was looking at me with a complicated expression, and Song Anren was standing beside him. Duan Wenye glanced at him. "Do I need to report to you who I'm with?" Liang Sun pursed his lips tightly, and his gaze landed on the hand with which Duan Wenye was holding me. "Xia is drunk, right? She's like this. She gets drunk easily after drinking a little. Uncle, I know her. Give her to me, otherwise she might cause trouble for you when she goes crazy later." Hearing this, I was startled. I opened my eyes wide and looked at Duan Wenye, who showed no sign of letting go, and then at Liang Sun. Our eyes met, and I instinctively blurted out 2 words, "Asshole." Liang Sun, his face suddenly darkened, his act of relying on others' power immediately fell apart, and I hurriedly hugged Duan Wenye's neck tightly. I pleaded in a low voice, "Don't give me to him to carry." Duan Wenye's chest vibrated with laughter. He said the words "let's go" and then took a step and left. 14. When I regained my memory again, it was the next morning. I rubbed my dizzy head and went downstairs while building up my mental strength. I had already prepared to be severely scolded by my father, but seeing my father's unusually kind expression was even scarier than seeing a ghost. "Xia, did you sleep well?" Me. I didn't dare to speak. "Not at all. My daughter is really promising. She's going to marry the most outstanding person in the circle." After thinking for a few seconds, I asked tentatively, "Are you planning to arrange for me to marry that 57-year-old director Wang?" My father forced a smile for a moment. "You're really different when you're with Wenye. Dad thinks you've gone from being stupid to cute." I froze in place. Suddenly, some forgotten fragments flooded into my mind. Last night, Duan Wenye dropped me off at my doorstep. I struggled with the seatbelt. When Duan Wenye leaned over to help me unbuckle it, I suddenly looked up. The corner of my mouth brushed past his lips. Duan Wenye didn't move. His gaze slowly shifted from my eyes down to the area below the tip of my nose. In the confined space, our slightly heavy breathing only added to the rising atmosphere of intimacy. Just when I thought Duan Wenye was about to do something, he suddenly pressed my chin and pulled back to create some distance. He gave a mocking smile. "I won't give you a second chance to take advantage of me without any commitment." The alcohol had brought out my lustful side. I stared longingly at Duan Wenye's lips and pursed my mouth in disappointment. I still remembered that this old man was quite good at kissing. as if to prevent me from kissing him. On the way into the house, he helped me walk with extreme restraint. My father was surprised to see Duan Wenye, but he quickly put on a smile. I couldn't remember exactly what they said. The only thing I remembered was that Duan Wenye leaned down close to my ear and spoke in a low voice that only the two of us could hear. Agree to marry me, and I'll let you kiss me. As if afraid that I wouldn't agree, he added an incentive, as much as you want. Did he think I was a fool? The word marriage snapped me back to a momentary state of clarity. Duan Wenye, who had driven away the young master Dong for me tonight, made my heart flutter for a moment. Moreover, it was inevitable that my father would force me into a marriage alliance to gain benefits for himself. In the end, in front of everyone, I agreed to the marriage alliance with Duan Wenye in a completely sober state. Yes, it was a marriage alliance. In my view at that time, even with a bit of affection as an added condition, it was still a compromise type of marriage in my definition. It was a decision made after weighing the pros and cons. It wasn't until much later, when I witnessed every single thing Duan Wenye did for me as an act of love, that I realized perhaps a little later, or perhaps if I had the right to choose, but the result wouldn't change. Generally speaking, under any pre-conditions, the conclusion remained the same. I would eventually fall in love with Duan Wenye and marry him. 15. Grandma Liang was probably feeling guilty. After that mix-up with the room card, she hadn't contacted me at all. Only after the engagement date between Duan Wenye and me was set did she finally give me a call after a long time. She asked me to come over for lunch. When I arrived, I found that Liang Sun was also there, and Duan Wenye was still on his way back. Grandma Liang came to greet me with some uncoordinated movements. Haha, xia, you're here, haha, ha. Looking at her forced smile, I was at a loss for words. When only Liang Sun and I were left in the living room, he frowned and spoke. Did you come here today to discuss the engagement? I nodded, not wanting to say more to him. Yu Xia, do you think you're being reasonable? There was irritation in the boy's voice. I looked at him in confusion. I admit that I've realized I like you a bit now, but if you team up with the elders to force me into marriage, it will only have the opposite effect. Do you understand? I was too stunned to speak. Liang Sun stood up and dusted off his hoodie, looking down at me. He still had that unapproachable attitude. Forcing me into marriage won't work. If I don't show up at the engagement banquet, it will be you who loses face. I opened my mouth silently and then closed it again. This was the Liang family's place. Would it be inappropriate for me to scold him now? 16. Liang Sun's pride finally crumbled at the dinner table, with the clear sound of chopsticks hitting the ground. Liang Sun's eyes trembled slightly. What did you say? Uncle is engaged to Yu Xia. He let out a mocking laugh. Don't be ridiculous. They're not even from the same generation. Duan Wenye casually replied with an soon you two won't be of the same generation either. Remember to call her aunt. I was still debating whether to give Liang Sun a kind and tolerant look as an elder when he pushed his bowl away and went back to his room with a dark face. 17. Duan Wenye drank some wine in the evening. As soon as he got in the car, he asked the driver to raise the partition. I immediately became alert. My tentative words was interrupted by Liang Sun, who came running out. Uncle, are you sure you want to marry her? Duan Wenye leaned lazily against the seat and rolled down the car window. Liang Sun looked past him at me. There was a contemptuous smile in his eyes, as if he had already predicted my miserable defeat. Uncle, you might not know that the person you're about to marry used to like me in a very humble way. Duan Wenye bit on a cigarette, lowered his head, and lit it with a lighter. It was hard to tell what he was feeling. For some reason, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Liang Sun was very satisfied with my reaction and smiled. His tone was even more leisurely. Yu Xia has a notebook filled with every single thing about her secret crush on me. Uncle, with your status, are you sure you want to marry someone who used to like your nephew, a cheapskate? With every word he said, my hand resting on the seat tightened a little more. After all, Liang Sun was Duan Wenye's nephew. The probability of him siding with me was much lower than the probability of him believing his own nephew, especially when such words were so humiliating. Duan Wenye rested the hand holding the cigarette on the window ledge. He slightly raised his wrist, motioning for me to look at Liang Sun. When Liang Sun and I made eye contact, he smiled confidently. See, Xia, Uncle wants you to get out and come with me. How could he possibly take a liking to you? Duan Wenye ignored him and just asked me, did you hear everything he said to insult you just now? Not sure what he was up to. I nodded silently. The light in front of me was blocked by a shadow. Duan Wenye leaned in, and the corner of his mouth curled up in a barely noticeable smile. His voice was alluring. Yu Xia, Don't be a coward, fight back. I was stunned and looked up at him in disbelief. I'm not just here to stand up for you. At the same time, I also give you enough confidence to do whatever you want. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he raised his eyebrows. Like right now, wouldn't it be more satisfying if you fought back yourself? I was convinced by his words. Somehow, I really leaned closer to the window, but before I spoke, I turned back to Duan Wenye and asked hesitantly, "Will you really back me up?" The man let out an from his nose. I pursed my lips and looked at Liang Sun firmly, my hand resting on the windowsill unconsciously clenched into a fist. After a moment of strange silence, "Go to hell, Liang Sun. The biggest stain on my life is that notebook. Tomorrow, I'll buy a new notebook and write down every curse word for you in it." Liang Sun's expression changed suddenly, as if he hadn't expected Duan Wenye to react this way. He stared at me intently, his face as cold as ice. 18, even after the car had driven for a while, I was still immersed in the relief of the breast being saved. I didn't realize at all that I had leaned all the way over just to scold Liang Sun, and now, I was still kneeling on Duan Wenye's lap, feeling better. There was a hint of cynicism in the man's leisurely smile. This question was very ambiguous. I didn't know if he was asking about how I felt after scolding Liang Sun or about my current position. Just as I was about to climb down calmly, the driver hit the brakes at the wrong time. I fell directly into Duan Wenye's arms. I felt something soft pressing against my lower back, so I reached out to touch it. "Where are you touching?" Duan Wenye caught my hand with a half-smile. Since I was still sitting on his lap, I blurted out without thinking, "I just felt something very soft." It should have been the cigarette case in his pocket. Duan Wenye slowly raised his eyes, and his hand holding mine felt hot. "Are you sure it's what's in your hand?" The car was so dim that there was almost no light. When I looked down at my hand, the passing streetlights cast light on the seat. Everything was laid bare. I almost let out a scream. I withdrew my hand as quickly as possible. I tried to get off Duan Wenye's lap, but he wouldn't let me. He held my waist and pulled me back into his arms. Duan Wenye was settling the score. "You said it was soft." I felt like crying but had no tears. "No, then what was it?" Seeing that Duan Wenye was going to keep pressing this issue, without thinking, I reached out and covered the lower half of his face. "Stop talking, okay?" Instead of pulling my hand away, Duan Wenye held me and changed our position. He made me straddle him. "Do you think this can stop me from talking?" His warm breath tickled my palm, not just my palm, also the tip of my heart. His slightly deep voice came through my fingers. I withdrew my hand and looked at him awkwardly. Duan Wenye looked flirtatious. "Maybe we should find another way to shut me up." The moonlight shone on his eyebrows and eyes, giving him an elegant and clear look like a cedar in a cold stream. My irregular heartbeat easily shattered the disguise of my pretended calmness. I was sure I was seduced by him. When I came to my senses, I had already leaned in, holding on to his shoulders. Our eyes both landed on each other's lips. Until they met, I recalled the entire process of our kiss on that confusing night, but probably because Duan Wenye had been drinking, this time he took the initiative almost immediately. He held my chin with one hand and forcefully pried open my mouth. He adjusted the angle from time to time, or he would let go for a moment, turn his head to the other side, and then kiss me again. In the middle of it, I regained a moment of clarity. I pushed against his shoulders. "The driver, he can't hear us." Duan Wenye cut in, his breathing slightly unsteady. Again, then I was pulled back into the trap of indulgence. 19. In the end, Liang Sun didn't end up with Song Anren. He told me this news himself. At that time, I was doing group work at Maker Coffee. The chair opposite me was pulled out, and someone sat down. "I heard from Grandma that you and Duan Wenye are planning to get the marriage certificate soon." It was the first time I heard Liang Sun call him by his full name. I looked up at him. The dejection in the boy's eyes couldn't be hidden by all his external advantages. "I once had a dream, Yu Xia." He smiled and shook his head. "In the dream, because of misunderstandings, I did a lot of things that made you sad. The only consolation was that in the dream, you still liked me." He lowered his eyes, and his gentle smile was mixed with bitterness. "It turns out that dreams really are the opposite of reality. In reality, before I've even done anything to you, you already don't like me anymore." I didn't have the energy to argue about these useless things with him. Suddenly remembering something, I took out a ring engraved with the initial of my name from my bag. I was about to return it to Liang Sun. Looking at the ring, he said calmly, "So you've even bought couple rings?" It was a simple sentence, but I felt like I didn't understand it. "What?" Liang Sun said. "I saw the same men's ring on Duan Wenye last time, but I never thought the women's ring would be in your hand." I felt as if I was in the deep sea, and the feeling of suffocation completely enveloped me. Liang Sun's words came from far, far away, taking me back to even more distant memories, in my previous life. I vaguely sensed that Liang Sun had fallen in love with Song Anran, although I was disappointed. I didn't want to interfere in their relationship. Just as I was planning to find a suitable time to ask Liang Sun about it, I received a gift box that claimed to be from the Liang family. Inside was this very ring. I thought it was a ring from Liang Sun. I never imagined that it was from Duan Wenye. So that night, when Liang Sun came to see me, I jumped into his arms excitedly and confessed boldly, "Liang Sun, I like you so much." Liang Sun didn't push me away. After a long silence, he hugged me back. "I know, what about you?" I looked up from his arms and asked hopefully. Liang Sun pressed me back into his arms, so I couldn't see his expression. "I've never said I don't like you." That was his ambiguous answer. The subtlety in it was ignored by my active dopamine at that time. It could be said that without this ring, most likely, my engagement with Liang Sun wouldn't have happened. "You xia." Liang Sun's questioning voice brought me back to my senses. I looked at the ring again and then put it on my finger. "What did you call me?" Liang Sun didn't realize I was setting a trap for him. "You xia." I gave him a smile that I hadn't shown for a long time. "Remember, you'll have to call me aunt soon." 20. Liang Sun left without saying a word. I nodded in satisfaction at his back. I was sure he wouldn't come back to pester me anymore. I didn't immediately ask Duan Wenye about the ring, but there was indeed a question that I couldn't figure out. Since he was the one who gave the ring, why didn't he say so? I stared at the ring, searching my memory for impressions of Duan Wenye from my previous life. Finally, I remembered that on the day I confessed to Liang Sun, when I looked up from Liang Sun's arms, over his shoulder, I saw a Cullinan facing us. But because it was too dark, before I could see the person in the car clearly, the car started and drove away. It drove into the lonely autumn night, not long ago. I saw an identical Cullinan in Duan Wenye's garage. I thought. It wasn't that he didn't speak up, he had seen me in love, so he didn't want to try again. 21. It wasn't until the engagement day that Duan Wenye put on the ring. The engagement banquet went smoothly from beginning to end. The only thing that bothered me a bit was the words of a friend I met during my internship. Her husband is 7 or 8 years older than her. She looked at me with a complicated gaze, as if she were someone with experience. "Sister, be more tolerant of your husband." As she spoke, she patted me on the shoulder. I looked at her in confusion. "I'm giving you a heads up in advance. He's older than you, and he'll get old before you do, you know." What kind of nonsensical statement is this? My little sister simply stopped beating around the bush and whispered to me with a sigh, "The older a man gets, the less capable he is. My husband is like that. Just when I'm about to get into the mood, he's already satisfied and lying there. It's even shorter than the time it takes me to read a short story." My husband told me that all men are like this. It was the first time I'd heard about such a thing. Although I was surprised, I still thought about it, realizing it wasn't a small matter. I sincerely asked for advice. "Is there a way to fix it?" My little sister shook her head and blushed as she said, "You can't count on men. I have an electronic partner now. I can send you the link later. You should give it a try. It's definitely more useful than a real person." I'd thought there was some great tonic for the body, but I didn't dwell on it and opened the door to go out. Duan Wenye was standing right at the door. Judging by his appearance, he must have just arrived, so I didn't think much of it. On the night of the engagement, Duan Wenye hardly let me drink any alcohol. He blocked all the people who came to offer a toast, but just when my favorability towards my fiancé had skyrocketed, it plummeted right back down. In Duan Wenye's apartment, he pinned me down on the sofa, his knee also pressed against my leg. He raised his hand and gently patted my cheek. "Tell me, what kind of partner is this electronic one?" The man's voice, tinged with alcohol, was slightly hoarse and sexy. I immediately realized that he had heard everything. I didn't want to buy it. I retorted in a small voice, "I originally just wanted to buy you some tonics in advance." If I had known this sentence would almost cost me half my life, I would have admitted to the electronic product rather than refute him thoughtlessly. Later, I don't know when we moved from the sofa to the bedroom, I buried my face in the pillow. His hand, wearing the same style ring, covered mine. As our fingers intertwined, the rings gently rubbed and collided, but soon, he turned me over. Although I really don't want to use the word gallop, at this moment, Duan Wenye is in exactly that state. Like electronic products, my throat was almost hoarse from crying. My self-preservation instinct made me shake my head desperately. "No, I don't like them. I only like you." At this moment, it was as if a pirate ship had suddenly come to a stop. The state of stillness was a very strange experience. "Really?" Duan Wenye looked down at me. I felt a little shy. We can't go through with this engagement, I sniffled, then shakily put my hands on his shoulders and wrapped my arms around his neck. I replied with a sob, really, Duan Winya. Today is the first day I've admitted to myself that I like you. That wasn't entirely accurate. If I traced back, I'd find that I liked him yesterday, a month ago, and there were also moments when my heart fluttered and stages when my favor for him grew. But I only bared my heart today. So I still choose to regard today as the first day I like him. In response, I received a long and somewhat greedy kiss from Duan Winya. Between breaths, he admitted in a low voice, not for me, a long time ago. The next afternoon, I sat in the study and opened the new diary I had already prepared. I wrote down yesterday's date, then, somewhat defiantly, I wrote, on the first day of liking Duan Winya. I almost lost half my life, the risk factor is quite high, today. I plan to reduce my liking for him by 0.1%. If he can let me have a good, undisturbed sleep, my liking for him can increase by 10%. When a ray of afternoon sunlight moved from the tip of my nameless finger to the tip of my index finger, I finally put down my pen. Before closing the notebook, I thought of something. I turned to the introduction page of the notebook and carefully wrote a few words. Record moments of heart fluttering.